Welcome back, horror lovers. Tonight, we bring you a chilling compilation of true dark web stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. So, grab your blanket and prepare yourself for in 180 minutes. Our first sinister story takes us to the deep corners of the internet. Here unsuspecting victims stumble upon a website that promises secrets of the dark arts. Little do they know what horrors await them in the shadows. We expose a disturbing website that trades in unspeakable acts of cruelty and torture. Behind the anonymity of the dark web, sick individuals satisfy their twisted desires for sadistic pleasure. Thank you for joining us on this terrifying journey through the dark web's most chilling stories. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more spine-tingling content. Stay safe out there, and never forget, evil lurks in the darkest corners. Good night, horror fans. I recognize what I'm about to write is going to upset a lot of people. I'm not here to offend anyone. I've just reached a point where I can no longer hold this in. There's really nobody I'm close enough to. Nobody that would hear what I have to say and not hold my past against me. I've been living life from day to day carrying a burden that has nearly driven me to the point of suicide. It doesn't matter what I do, how much I try to scour out the bad choices left decaying in my past, it's that same burden that stalks me every day. When I get to work, when I'm hanging out with friends, it never, ever goes away. The images begin to flood my mind and suddenly I can picture her face all over again. Always the same tears. The same expression of fear that was burned across her innocent face. I can't hold her face anymore. I can't keep going on like this. I'm writing this in the hopes that possibly by putting my story out into the world, I can free myself from some of the guilt. Before we proceed any further, you should know that I'm not a good person. Don't get me wrong, I try to be. I really do, but part of me is convinced that this life I try to live right away will never make up for who and what I was before all of this. Before the video. You may come away from this hating me, and for that I can't blame you. I spent a good part of my life as a neo-Nazi. While a lot of the guys I hung out with were doing it for the trend, I saw that life was something more. I was a part of something that I really believed in. It was religion. My religion. At one time the German people had recreated a section of the world in their own image. I saw Hitler as a prophet, sent to the Aryan people to lead them into a fresh era of power and prosperity. I thought Hitler held a vision, but they killed him before he could realize it. I considered myself as one of the chosen many, entrusted with a flame that we would take out into the world. We would finish what our great leader had started generations ago. I know now all of that was bullshit. We were all just oblivious cogs inside of an obsolete machine. We were young then. We were furious, angry that we felt like outcasts, angry that this world didn't understand us, and more importantly, it didn't even try. We were all the products of broken families, abandonment, abuse. We felt alone out there, exposed. My parents had just gotten divorced. The split was sudden and sharp. I was 13 at the time, yet I couldn't realize why they did it. The sole thing that made it abundantly clear was that while my mother insisted that I live with her, my father agreed to the arrangement without putting up the slightest hint of protest at the idea. That part hurt. It hurt bad. I was always close to my father, closer than my mother and I could ever dream of being. I held nothing against my mother, my father, and I just always seemed to click. I guessed we were so much alike. Turns out that I couldn't have been further from the truth. With the exclusion of a few brief visits, stretched out over the years, I'd never seen my father, at least not enough of him for it to mean anything. I carried on my life from that point under the assumption that my mother had somehow been the cause of everything. I didn't know why she pulled our family apart. I just knew that I resented her for it. I'd find out years afterwards that the reason behind my parents' divorce wasn't my mother as much as it was my father's infidelity. He had been fucking this girl behind Mom's back for about a year. I saw the nasty bitch once when I spent Christmas with the old man. Perky, blonde, and stupid, I determined that my mother's obvious replacement was barely out of high school. The whore introduced herself as my father's friend. Even then, it didn't take long for my teenage mind to put two and two together. It was a revelation that only made me withdraw into myself further. Every day I had to look at that cunt. I watched her wander around the house in her tight t-shirts and lace panties. She never saw it as inappropriate, dancing around the house half naked while her boyfriend's teenage son was visiting for a week. She kept fucking doing that. Either she was oblivious to the inappropriate nature of her actions, or she simply didn't care. Either one of those explanations wouldn't have changed the fact that I felt like I was being constantly disrespected, all of it falling out under my father's apathetic watch. He may have been king of the castle, but in the end it wouldn't be him calling the shots. Rather, everything that happened in that house was dictated by a ditzy piece of barley legal pussy. Pussy that my father made a point to indulge himself in every day. It was so disgusting. While my father kept his flirtatious gestures toned down in the beginning, he'd eventually get comfortable enough to start repetitively articulating his unfiltered appreciation for all things jailbait. She'd grin and he'd slap her on the ass. It would be moments like those that constantly seemed to happen within my proximity. I tried to dismiss it, act like their interactions weren't driving me mad on a daily basis. While my father saw a walking sex doll, all I could envision was the whore that he made a point to choose over Mom. 2 days before I go home, my father would start hounding me to go and do something outside the house. To sweeten the pot, he even gave me $40 and recommended that I catch a movie at the theater across town. I knew what he was trying to do, and I knew that he intended on doing it with her. I heard them through the walls nearly every night. They were so loud that I would have to cover my ears with a pillow to get to sleep. Apparently fucking after dark wasn't enough for dear old Dad. Apparently he was in the mood for a midday snack. I reluctantly agreed and took the bribe money. I had only been outside of the house for a few minutes when I suddenly felt compelled to go back inside. I returned to the front door only to find that it had been locked. I raced around the house only to find the same with the back door. With no traditional way back in, improvised by climbing through the guest room window. I tried my best to remain calm. I'd learned very quickly that it wasn't my sounds that mattered, rather the sounds that were occurring from my father's bedroom. Loud, wet gagging, as if someone was being chalked behind the threshold that was cracked open just a few feet ahead of me. As I proceeded forward, the sounds would become more and more acute. Strange, disturbing gurgles carried across the hall. These were sounds that continued to befuddle me, right up until I slowly pushed the door open enough for me to peek through. I was speechless from what I was watching. My father's girlfriend was laying on her spinal column while he forcefully ground into her face from an upward angle. At that point, I wasn't a stranger to sex. By then I had learned the basics along with any extra notes that I picked up from other kids in the neighborhood. What I was seeing, however, didn't fall into any of those classes. The exchange had been proceeding on long enough to cause the girlfriend's makeup to start oozing into the sheets beside her. She cringed, she gagged, but she never said stop, nor did she let my father know how uncomfortable she was. She simply lay there in complete submission. As mad as I had been at my father in the days prior, I couldn't help but feel a little pang of admiration at what I was seeing. He was punishing her. He was punishing her, and she deserved every minute of it. The explicit moment would last for another 10 uncomfortable minutes before my father ended with a scream that resounded through the empty house. As soon as my father collapsed in exhaustion, I watched as the girlfriend slowly started to gather herself, quickly placing a hand over her smeared mouth to keep any of my father from spilling out as she proceeded to get off the bed, taking a few disjointed steps into the adjoining bathroom. That night, all I could think about would be what I watched in that bedroom. It took me hours to get to sleep. The next morning I awakened up to find that my father had left earlier to get an oil change before taking me back home that afternoon. As I walked through the house, I detected that my father had gone alone. The TV was playing in the living room. On the couch lay the girlfriend, passed out, wearing her usual t-shirt and panties. I attempted to get her attention. She didn't even move. I must have stared at her for 15 minutes. Every second spent thinking about how my father punished her, how she deserved everything she received. I wanted to practice what my father did. I wanted to punish her too. I foolishly convinced myself that I'd practice what I envisioned and she wouldn't try to stop me. I crawled on top of her snoring body and positioned myself like I had seen earlier. She opened her eyes right as I began to fidget with my zipper. She said nothing in those first few seconds. Once it all finally set in, she let out a scream that hurt my ears before pushing me off into the floor. She then quickly dashed into the bedroom, slamming the door behind her. When my father got home, I knew that he would be bursting into my room shortly after. It all happened faster than even I thought it would. He kicked my ass like I was simply another guy off the street. When all was said and done, he threw me a towel, gave me enough money for a bus ticket, then ordered me to get the fuck out of his house. He never told my mother why he sent me back along the bus. He never told her why he abruptly decided to cut the visits from Blue Moon down to almost non-existent. I couldn't have cared less. As far as I was concerned, my father was dead. Nobody has a shit about me, so I wouldn't give a shit about them. I soon became the epitome of adolescent delinquency. It was during that time that I was approached by a skinhead at the skate park. They were throwing a party and inviting kids from around the neighborhood. I decided to go and my life changed forever. I could tell right away that they were the people I belonged to. We were the orphans of society, but we were also the descendants of a proud people. A proud race, a pure race. When you feel small and marginalized, of course your ears are going to perk up when somebody says that you're better than the majority of people out there simply because I was born with the genetic lottery ticket. Prior to joining, I never considered myself racist. I actually didn't even know anyone who was black or Jewish. Most of the people in my hometown were white, so something like that never even crossed my head. In the end, it was never about those we went after. It was about being part of something. I finally had a family of my own. My mother went off on me when she found out how I was spending my time away from home. She told me that she refused to let a Nazi sleep under her roof. I didn't argue. I went away. I ended up moving in with my friend Torch. We both felt so accomplished and motivated. We felt we were unbeatable. My life continued on that track in the years to come. I intimidated people, I offended people, I did whatever was required of me. It was a vicious cycle that would go on before suddenly derailing the moment I saw that video. You're probably questioning how a video could suddenly change a person's opinion overnight. I can tell you now with no exaggeration that my opinion didn't just change. Every fiber of my being changed, and it didn't occur overnight. It happened as soon as I turned off my computer. I couldn't sleep that night, so I got on the net and started cruising the usual white power websites and message boards. I couldn't find anything to keep my interest. That's when I decided to boot up Tor and hit the deep web for something that I could sink my teeth into. The site installed Promised Land. It's a deep web message board dedicated to all things controversially white power related. The sites that people can find on the surface web are light, to say the least. The government set about cracking down on anything that could be considered extremist behavior. When that happened, people took off heading to the dark web, where nobody could censor what they decided to say or do. The most extreme thing I had ever seen on Promised Land was a 40-second clip of some guys dragging the dead body of a dark man behind their truck. There was no way of telling if the man was dead before they set about dragging him or after. I'll be the first to allege that I'm not proud that I watched that, but the truth is the truth. The video segment was usually cluttered with recorded lectures, how-to-weapon footage, and the occasional Aryan Barbie doing a striptease. The lineup was different that night. The top-rated video had siphoned the majority of user votes. The title was Uncle Adolf's Wonderful Puppet Show. The comments were insane. The people writing them seemed overly stirred up for some reason. Some of the people demanded more videos like it, while others explained in particular how they couldn't watch the whole thing. The chatter just made me more curious. I downloaded the MP4 and clicked play. I wish I could take that back. The video was distorted, jumpy. The footage looked like it had been shot almost a decade ago. Everyone around the camera spoke fluent German. The person holding the camera is talking to a beautiful, short-haired woman with a roguish grin on her youthful face. They seem to be inside of some sort of warehouse or mill. The woman lured the cameraman down a flight of rusted, spiral stairs. They continued talking to each other as they worked their way down a seemingly endless number of steps. The further down they go, the more we start to pick up noises. It sounds like it's coming from a bunch of people. The footage jumps forward. The woman was now sitting next to the cameraman, running her mouth as he zoomed in away of her attractively round face. The two were sitting inside of an auditorium. Old yet maintained, the interior looked as if it's made for theater productions. The auditorium was taken with other chatty Germans. The footage jumped forward again, only now everybody in the auditorium was standing. They all Heil Hitler while an aged anthem played through the old speakers that are wired throughout the auditorium. The anthem concluded and everyone sat back down. The lights began to dim just as the stage curtain started to function. Everyone begins clapping. We get to see what's on the stage. Stationed at the center is a large, metal replica of Adolf Hitler sitting down in a chair. The giant Adolf had to be at least 15 feet tall. There are regions of the figure that have rusted, even some of the paint had begun to crack, exposing the sharp-looking metal behind Hitler's grinning face. While metal Hitler's left arm was resting, the right has been positioned straight up. Likewise, unlike the left, the right arm didn't end with a hand, rather a mesh of jagged, metal barbs. If you looked closely you could ascertain that the right arm was connected to a jumble of thick wires that extended from the metal Hitler, all the way to a complicated-looking electrical box. The old metal inside Hitler began to churn and click. We watch as the flesh begins to move in the chair like a lurching animatronic. Hitler's eyes started flashing as it spoke a series of German idioms. The voice was old and muffled, distorted like the kind you'd hear a fast food drive-through. A man appears on the stage. He's dressed like a circus ringmaster. The only major adjustment to his outfit is a large swastika, sewn onto his top hat. He's pushing a big box on wheels. The cube is covered with a black tarp that is quickly withdrawn when the man comes to a stop. Underneath the tarp is in a box. It's a cage. Inside there's a woman curled the fetal position. She's of African lineage. Her clothes were in shreds and she looks as if she's been physically abused recently. The louder she cried, the louder the audience cheered. More men came on stage. They opened the cage and forcefully removed the woman from her prison. While they struggled to draw her out, a strange-looking contraption began to lower from above the curtains. stopping just above the raised Hitler arm. This creation was formed mostly of metal with a series of leather straps located at the four ends. The men hoisted the woman up into the contraption. Despite her protest, they yet managed to strap her in. She hollered, she begged, they only laughed at her. At this point, the audio in the video would become drowned out by the animalistic screams of the audience. The contraption started up one time more. It lowered the screaming woman onto the upper side of the jagged metal. The powerful hydraulics pushed her down into the razor-sharp metal like a human eraser onto a pencil. The sounds she made were indescribable. The farther down she was pushed, the more blood flowed down the mechanical Hitler's arm. After a few minutes, the woman would give out from shock. The audience started booing loudly. The ringmaster assures them that there is still more to come. The ringmaster looks to the man standing near the electrical box. He nodded and the man pulled a lever down. Sparks flew from the box as electricity rapidly traveled from the box all the way through the metal arm that bore the woman up. Her body began to jolt uncontrollably while her teeth chattered so loud you could pick up the sound well into the audience. The mechanical Hitler started to act and talk as this was going on. Moments later, the applause would be deafening. After that, the video stopped. The video disappeared from the forum a few days afterward. Not that it mattered. I'm sure it's still floating about. Somewhere, right now, some sick fuck is probably watching it. Me, I left all that shit behind. All I can do now is try to keep the pieces together. As for those of you out there who think hate empowers you, let it go. Just let it die. You have no clue what real hate is. Real hate creeps through your blood like venom. It's a blackness that invades every inch of your body until it ultimately gets its claws around your heart. Once real hate has gotten it full of you, it leaves behind a withered husk of something that could have been called a human being. I've seen real hate and I've spent every day since wishing I hadn't. What happened to me isn't going to pull on any heartstrings, I'm sure. I'll admit it right now, I'm a bad guy, a low-life sleazebag that made my money outside of the law. I'm here so others can point their finger at me and say, at least I'm not like him. That's been my role in society and I've come to terms with it, but I'm still a human being, I still have feelings and rights. So what happened to me should never happen to anyone. Period. So like I said, I'm an outlaw. I sell pharmaceuticals that let people forget their problems for a while. Downside is that the government has been taking over my job lately, what with marijuana being legalized and all that. Customers are moving towards easier to get and no jail time providing kicks. It's been a rough go for me, economically. Had to diversify my portfolio, so to speak, and turn to gun running on the dark web. Now there's a revenue stream that won't dry up soon. Unmarked handguns and fully automatic weapons with no wait period or background check appeal to a lot of different clientele. I don't know where they go or who is buying them for what purpose. I'm not the morality police, just a guy trying to make a buck. Enough of that though, let's cut to the chase. I got a story to tell and you got time to listen. It all started a few weeks ago. Business had been booming lately, what with all the riots both sides want to be armed, my usual base of gangs, mafia, and various criminals, and not to mention the whole quarantine. Toilet paper isn't the only thing being stockpiled, I guess. The point I'm trying to make is that I had so much business I couldn't keep track of it all, or anything else for that matter. So when earlier this year a news report came on about a little kid being caught in the crossfire of some baddies, and that the police had traced the weapons being used to having been sold from the dark web, it never even registered on my radar. For Sundays ago I had just gotten off the phone with my grandmother. She wasn't doing too well, but I promised her the payment for her treatment was in the mail when I got an email from a client, a small-time gang called Sun Neon. If that doesn't ring a bell, then they're the triad. If you still don't know what I'm talking about, you don't know the underworld, Google it. They were asking why they got 112-inch black dildos instead of the AK-47s they had ordered. Let me tell you, they did not find this funny at all. After that, the emails came pouring in and threats were made on my life, ranging from big-time gangs to local pubis wondering where their Bambi Killer 3000 was. I spent all of Monday reaching out to my contacts and asking what had happened. None of them knew. According to them, the shipments went out as ordered. Had to hire a hacker to get into the UPS system, only to find out that the orders had been rerouted to police organizations and then other orders were sent out in their place. Holy hell, my life is ruined, I said to myself, head in hands as I tried to puzzle together what had actually happened. Reality hadn't even set in yet when a voice came through the speakers on my computer. Having a bad day, are we? It said, funny how these things happen out of nowhere and blindside you. I looked up and noticed that the light was on, indicating that my webcam was also active. When you've been on the dark web as long as I have, you know the risks you run of being hacked. I thought I had set up enough protection, but there is always someone out there that can get around it, I suppose. Unfazed by this, given my recent circumstances, I sat there and gave the camera the middle finger. Wouldn't have taken you as the stoic type. Especially after your reputation is in ruins and your life may now be at stake. Pissed off some high-level buyers, haven't you? They might just come to collect your ass for the goods they didn't get. Piss off. Wait, it was you, wasn't it? I said, bolting upright. Initially this was an annoyance, now this voice had my attention. What I may or may not have done should be your least concern. You should be worried about the 4 triad members coming around the corner down the street right now. The voice said. My computer screen switched to a CCTV camera down my street, I think it was from an ATM, and showed a group of burly Chinese men coming down the road. I could tell it was by my place from the little bakery across the way from the camera. At first I rushed to grab my things and head out, but then it hit me. Why would this voice ruin my life and then help me escape by warning me someone was after me? Inches from the door I stopped as I mulled this over. Moments later there was a knock on my apartment door. Through the peephole I saw the same 4 men that had minutes ago been down the street. Vibrations went off in my pocket and I reached in to grab my phone. Don't talk, just listen. I know a safe place for you to go. Head out the back window and down the fire escape. I'll tell you where to go after that. The same voice from my computer speakers told me through my phone. I didn't have a second to think about what was happening and followed what he told me to do. Down the rusty ladder and into the dirty alleyway I went. As soon as I hit the ground, a lookout on the street spotted me. He yelled up to his companions, then gave chase. Take the next left, then cross the street and go down the alley on the other side, he said. Gunshots rang out from behind and a bullet whizzed by my head. Hurry up, you're almost there. I can't hold the light much longer, the voice told me. There was no traffic on the street, so I was able to cross easily. The men were about 10 feet behind me, and as soon as I was on the other side, the stoplight turned green and the road I had just crossed became busy. One of the men seemed to think he could follow after me and the cars would stop for him. He was mistaken and got hit by one. This caused a huge jam and the other men were forced to abandon their chase to tend to their now unconscious associate. Keep going down the alley, then take a left and go into the building there. I did as I was told, and once I turned the corner, ran into the door on my left and slammed it with relief. The room was large and dark save for the flicker of a computer screen in the middle. There wasn't much I could make out, but the space was seemingly empty. From the white light I could tell the wall to my right was covered in a foam latex texturing. My phone hung up and there was the soft click of a lock from the door behind me. "Hey! You can't lock me in here!" I yelled. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded as I made my way to the computer. "How did the Triad get my address, and who the hell are you? Why would you save me after ruining my life?" "I'm the guy who gave the Triad your address." "That's who I am," the voice said from the computer. "I'd save you after ruining your life because revenge is a dish best served cold." The temperature in the room immediately began to drop, and within minutes my breath was frosty as I huddled on the floor in a feeble attempt to stay warm. It was then I realized I was in some kind of warehouse and the foam latex was insulation. Breath became labored, my eyes wouldn't focus. I tried to talk, but all that came out was gibberish. Heavy eyelids finally refused to open as I sank into a blackness I had never experienced before. I did as I was told, and once I turned the corner, ran into the door on my left and slammed it with relief. The room was large and dark save for the flicker of a computer screen in the middle. There wasn't much I could make out, but the space was seemingly empty. From the white light I could tell the wall to my right was covered in a foam latex texturing. My phone hung up and there was the soft click of a lock from the door behind me. "Hey! You can't lock me in here!" I yelled. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I demanded as I made my way to the computer. "How did the Triad get my address, and who the hell are you? Why would you save me after ruining my life?" "I'm the guy who gave the Triad your address." "That's who I am," the voice said from the computer. "I'd save you after ruining your life because revenge is a dish best served cold." The temperature in the room immediately began to drop, and within minutes my breath was frosty as I huddled on the floor in a feeble attempt to stay warm. It was then I realized I was in some kind of warehouse and the foam latex was insulation. Breath became labored, my eyes wouldn't focus. I tried to talk, but all that came out was gibberish. Heavy eyelids finally refused to open as I sank into a blackness I had never experienced before. "Get up. I'm not done with you yet," the voice said. My head pounded like a bass drum, dull and achy. Lights were now on in the warehouse. The place was even bigger than I had originally thought. Not just a freezer like I had figured, it took up about half the city block and was wall-to-wall white. There was a door opposite of the one I entered and one on each of the other walls as well. Throbbing pain coursed through my right hand. Looking down, I was shocked to realize my middle finger had been cut clean off. "What the hell?" "My finger. You took my finger." Hurts when something is taken from you suddenly, doesn't it? Here are my rules. Listen up. You don't touch the computer, or you die. You do what you're told, or you die. Don't try to escape, or you die. That's it. Pretty simple. For the next 24 hours I own you. Now come here. I got something I want to show you. Still too weak to stand, I crawled over to the screen like an animal. Pain blinded me every time my hand hit the floor. At least the bleeding had stopped already. Pictures of guns shown on the screen. 3 pistols and an automatic rifle. "Do these look familiar to you?" the man asked. "No, should they? You sold them earlier this year. They were used in a shooting that killed 2 drug dealers and an innocent child. Look, I only facilitate the sales, I don't actually handle the product. I'm more of a middleman. What these people want them for and why they use them is not my concern. I'm only trying to make a buck." Then get a job and contribute to society like a normal person. You sad excuse for a human being. Jobs nowadays barely cover the bills, let alone pay for a grandmother's cancer treatment. Go cry to a shrink. Point is that these weapons are now being kept at the police station in the evidence locker. I want you to go get them. I can't do that. I'm a mid-level gun runner. I can't get around the security, or pass myself off as an officer to get in there. I'd need a uniform, a badge, key cards. It's undoable for me. I think now would be a good time to take a hard look into your stumpy finger. I brought my hand up and looked deep into the wound. Underneath all the blood clots and pulp I could clearly make out a silver-looking metal. That container has potassium cyanide in it. If you don't do as you're told, it injects you with a lethal dose. I have the button here in my hand. Pictures of me started to flash across the screen. They were of me at the grocery store, the gas station, and even taking a walk near my apartment. I can see you anywhere in the city. Stray off course and you're dead. There is an earpiece in a basket by the door. Connect your phone to it via Bluetooth and listen to my instructions. If you do what I say, you'll be fine. Went to the door and found everything as he said I would. Connected the earpiece to my phone and put it in my ear. It was pretty small and most likely wouldn't be noticeable by others. There was also a police uniform in the basket which I put on as well. He then told me which station to go to and that there was a car waiting for me outside. The door opened with a click. Outside was fully marked police car, gassed and ready to go. Whoever this guy was, he had connections I had never seen before. It was a nerve-wracking 30-minute drive to my destination. My hand hurt like hell the whole time, a constant reminder of the power this person now had over me. So, you need these guns back so you don't get in trouble? If that's the case, why didn't you send one of your people to do it? No reason to torture and harass me like this. I'm just saying you seem to have connections and incredible hacking skills. No need for all this violence. I said, turn left here. He replied, and I drove the rest of the way in silence, save for when he told me directions. Finally got to the station, was a little worried my hand would draw suspicion, so I slipped it into my pocket. The added pressure from the pants caused the capsule to shift. I was worried it might go off accidentally, then I would hit the floor dead in the middle of a cop shop surrounded by officers. Wouldn't that make for a crazy news story at 6? The evidence locker is in the basement. Cell reception will cut out there. You got 15 minutes to get the guns and get out, or I inject the cyanide. I don't want you turning yourself in or something. Everything you need to get the guns is in your left back pocket, and I've already submitted all the necessary paperwork in the computer. The man said, and then he was gone. Got down to the basement, no problem. Flashed my badge and asked to be let in. Everything was going smooth. Went into the back and put the 3 guns into evidence bags, then started to walk out. Hey, you gotta sign those out. You can't just walk out of here with them. The clerk behind the desk said. Oh yeah, long day. Must have forgotten. I replied. Gave the man my badge number and signed some paperwork. I thought this case was closed already. Why do they want to look at the evidence again? The clerk asked. I stumbled for a minute, then came up with something. New evidence in the case. The DA wants to look at some stuff. They might reopen it. I said, hoping that any of that made sense. Ah, okay. You must be from uptown. The paperwork is all in order, but I'll need a detective to sign off on this first. The clerk got up and went in back. I could see him through some glass talking to a man in a suit. He looked at me, then the other man looked at me, then the clerk pointed to me. I don't know what they were saying, but the detective looked suspicious. 14 minutes had already passed and I didn't have time to wait. Without thinking, I grabbed the bags that held the guns through the slot of the plexiglass divider and ran. I could hear the office doors fly open as the clerk and detective gave chase. It didn't matter if they even caught me. If I didn't get out of there in a minute, I was a dead man anyways. Took the stairs and ran as fast as I could. My heart was beating out of my chest as I burst through the doors on the first floor. My pursuers followed right behind me. They were yelling and screaming for someone to stop me. One big burly cop stepped out in front of me right before the main doors. I put my shoulder down like I was going to plow into him, but then took a step left, then right. He lunged at me, but I narrowly avoided it and was out in the parking lot. Shots rang out as I sprinted to my cruiser and got in. The back window shattered as it was hit by a bullet, but I managed to turn the key and get out of there. Air-splitting sirens filled the air as a whole slew of cop cars gave chase. "Did you get the guns?" the voice said over my earpiece. "Yes, you asshole. You set me up. I didn't know you would mess up this bad. I'll take care of it. You just get out of their sight." I managed to take a few sharp corners and lose them for a second, then I heard my mystery man's voice come across the scanner. He was giving them false directions on which way I was going, leading them away from me. He then told me where to ditch the car I was in and that a new vehicle would be waiting for me there along with a change of clothes. I again did what he said and got into an old Ford Pinto and changed my clothes. It took about 20 minutes to get back to the warehouse. The lights were off again and the computer was the only thing visible. Put the guns in the back and then come back over to the computer. I was told. Went and did it. As I approached, I noticed on the screen there was a picture of a young boy. I'm not going to do any kidnapping or off a child. You can just kill me right now. I told him. No, you won't. You already have. Kneel down and take a close look at this picture. Surely you recognize this one. He was all over the news a while back. I don't know what you mean. I've never killed a kid before in my life, I said while getting down to look. Not directly, you haven't, but let me tell you about this one. He was 9 years old and had just gotten his new shiny bike he had always wanted. He asked his dad if he could go for a ride and his dad said yes. What kind of world do we live in when a kid can't even ride his own bike? He was only a few blocks from his house when gunfire filled the street. There were some drug dealers on that block and it was drive-by. Do you know where these people got their guns from? Let me take a wild guess. Me. I responded. Do you know which guns they were? A voice said from behind me. The touch of cold steel pressed against the back of my head. You killed my son when you sold those men these guns. The same ones I had you retrieve for me. Whoever this man was, he was now right behind me, and from the sound of it he eagerly anticipated my demise. All right, man, if you're going to do it, then do it. Know, however, that I only do this to help my grandma. She'd be dead if it wasn't for me. She's old and has already lived her life. My son had his whole life ahead of him and you stole that. The ends don't justify the means. A sharp crack rang in my head when he hit me with the butt of the gun. I was on my back looking up, tears welled in my eyes from the pain. He pointed the gun right at my face and pulled the trigger. I flinched in anticipation for my final moments. Click. The gun was empty. Death is too good for you and will never bring my boy back. You're gonna live your life in fear from now on. One day, or maybe never, you may experience the most horrific and painful death ever dreamed of. Inside of you is another capsule, a different capsule that won't be detected by any medical procedure or scan. If I ever feel the need to release it, you will have a slow, painful, and unstoppable death. You'll have to wait and see if that day ever comes. He then threw the gun into my face and busted my nose. His footsteps trailed off as he walked out the door. The temperature began to drop and the faint sounds of police sirens echoed in the distance before I lost consciousness. When I came to, I was in the hospital being treated for hypothermia. The police linked me to the evidence room robbery and I'm now serving 20 years in the state pen. My hand throbs every time there is a change in the weather, and I don't sleep much anymore, always wondering if this day will be my last. Remember when deep web stories were the fad? Every week, you'd find a new tale of someone going too far on the deep web, finding something terrible, and ending up getting attacked for speaking out against it. This story's a bit similar. The difference is, I still love the deep web. Let me explain. I was a senior in high school at the time, and I was definitely no popular kid. My friends were the oddities of the school, the few people who dared to defy the norm. It was them who told me about the deep web, a place on the internet where you are completely unwatched, anonymous, capable of doing whatever you want. Of course, I was intrigued. Most of my friends just used it to buy drugs, but I thought a little bigger. I wanted to know what happened in the darkest parts of the deep web, whether or not my friends were telling the truth when they talked about horrible fetish sites and assassins you can hire to kill anyone you like. Of course, I wasn't planning on using any of it. I've never been particularly interested in sex, so fetish sites don't interest me, and there's really nobody I'd like to kill. It was the mystery of it all that fascinated me. Going to these sites would be like peering into a side of the world only a few have ever seen, like a wholly new experience. At the time, I was tired of the monotony of life. I'd get up at the same time every day, go to school, attend the same classes, talk to the same people, go home, play some games, do homework, go to sleep, and then it'd repeat. I wondered if other people got tired of that. Anyway, it took me a while to actually dive into the deep web. As fascinated as I was, I'd been warned of what could happen to me. I read the stories I talked about, too. Who isn't afraid of being threatened by hackers, or stalked by some creep you piss off online? That kind of shit kept me from actually going on the deep web, until the day I manned up and decided it was time to break the monotony. It was time to delve into the underbelly of the internet, time to see a world I had only dreamed of. For the first week or so, it was fucking boring. It was just drug sites, and stuff where people exposed government secrets, or whatever. Nothing as dark as I expected. I don't even do drugs, so that was useless to me, and I wasn't into politics. There wasn't really much I was into back then. So, I was disappointed. The only reason I kept exploring was my sheer desire to experience the world I thought existed on the deep web. That world was darker than any drug site. That world had murder, torture, fucked up porn for fucked up people, and all sorts of nasty shit. I eventually got my wish. Just when my apathy towards the deep web got to its highest point, I found what I was looking for. The site didn't have a name. I thought it was a broken link for a bit, since it only led me to a black screen. Right before I could click out, however, a chat box opened on the screen. Someone using the name admin typed in the chat box, saying, "Congrats. You found the worst place on the fucking net." I stared at the screen, more bemused than afraid. It took me a moment to type back, "Cool." That's all I said. What else was there to say? I'm here to see your finest torture porn. A moment after, the admin replied, "Ha ha. You want in?" I hesitated, all those horror stories flooding back into my head, but it was too late to chicken out. This was what I came for. Even if I just clicked out at the first sign of danger, I had to see what was there. I had to break the fucking monotony. I had to know. I hastily typed back, not allowing myself to stop. Yeah. The chat box closed, and I was led directly to what looked like a video, with another chat box next to it. There were around 5 other people there, each eagerly waiting for something. The video was in black and white, and showed a small room. The only thing inside was a wooden chair, until, after around 5 minutes of waiting, the door to the room opened. A man was shoved inside, blindfolded and naked, save for a pair of black briefs. He was followed by a woman, this one dressed all in black, her face covered by a mask. In an instant, the chat room went wild. I almost closed the window to spare myself, knowing immediately where this was going, but again, I told myself that this was what I wanted. Maybe not the torture, but the window into the very worst parts of the world. The woman pulled a knife from her pocket and cut off the man's blindfold as she shoved him into the chair. He didn't struggle for a moment, and once his eyes were visible I could see why. It looked like he'd been drugged. Resisting was impossible. I frowned, glancing to the side. This was fucked up. I knew this was fucked up. My conscience told me to call the cops, or at least to click out, but I forced myself to watch. She turned to the camera, pointing the knife at the man's throat. One of the people in the chat typed, "One of the fingers." Cut off one of his fingers. I clenched my hands into fists, taking in a sharp breath. Was this really fucking happening? Was I gonna just watch as this guy got mutilated, as a small crowd of people watched in glee? I felt like throwing up, a feeling that only worsened when the woman nodded and turned to the man, grabbing his limp hand and carefully slicing off one of his fingers. Blood spurted from the wound, and the man moaned in pain, but he couldn't fight back. Breathing heavily, I hovered my cursor over the axe, planning on getting the fuck out of there. But I didn't. The woman looked unimpressed, as if she thought the people in chat could do better. Another person called for a slice up the man's arm, and she complied. He was bleeding heavily now, clearly in deep pain, but these people were fucking sick. They were cheering her on from chat, suggesting new and painful tortures for her to inflict. Eventually, I stopped breathing heavily. I stopped feeling sick. It was starting to grow on me. By the end, the man was on the ground, covered in blood and breathing heavily. I watched this for around half a minute. The people in chat were starting to die down. They'd inflicted enough pain, they had their fun. It seemed like things were wrapping up. Funny, I thought, how it was over just when I was getting into it. I smirked. This was exciting. This was better than any game I could play, much better than any fucking class I could attend, better than sitting with a group of fucking nobodies pretending like I cared for a goddamn second about them. This was the world I wanted to see. This was darkness, this was the underbelly, this was reality. Fucking end him. Slit the throat. I typed in chat for the first time. She nodded for one last time, bringing the man to his feet before slowly dragging her blade across his throat, sending more of his blood spurting out. Once it was done, she dropped him, and he fell to the ground, limp. He was dead. The people in chat started complimenting the torturer, talking about how it had been another good time, starting to set a date for the next showing. On screen, the woman left the room, leaving the corpse behind. Of course, I hastily wrote down the date for the next showing. This was going to be part of my life, now. I was going to be part of something bigger. I was going to command these people's deaths. What? A rush. So, yeah. I still love the deep web. I'm in college now, and now I'm even more immersed in the deep web. I've seen shit some people would freak out just knowing exists. I've fucked around every sick porn site known to man. I've finally broken the monotony of life. Inspirational, right? How one high schooler defies the boredom inherent in his life by discovering his true passion. I've spent the better part of a decade as a cybersecurity analyst for Trident Cybersecurity, or TCS for short. A highly regarded private agency whose name is whispered across government halls and boardrooms. Our client list ranges from powerful conglomerates and discreet billionaires to governmental bodies looking for invisible defense lines in the current digital hellscape. Over the years, I've worked on a myriad of complex cases. I helped take down an international ring of hackers intent on disrupting the national power grid. I've unearthed digital scams hidden in the most intricate labyrinth of code. My work with Trident led to the arrests of some very dangerous people you will never hear of who have eluded international authorities for years. I am naturally an introvert, preferring the company of a glowing screen and encrypted data to people. My colleagues often joke that I could talk to computers. If patience, diligence, and an uncanny ability to find patterns in chaos are characteristics you'd attribute to a conversation with computers, they might have been right. When I was handed the case file labeled Deepweb Anomalies, I rolled my eyes. I had seen 100 similar files. Authorities who can afford our services scared of the deep web's reputation, thinking every glitch or system hiccup was some malicious entity or person from the darker corners of the internet. However, it's either just them unable to explain an online behavior and getting spooked, or someone hitting sites at random to test vulnerabilities or just cause chaos for fun. Just another day at the office, I thought, ready to explain away the smoke and mirrors surrounding whatever tricks they were seeing. As I began the investigation, I traced the incidents to an obscure message board, a niche digital hotspot where internet users exchanged experiences and data about purported paranormal events. The board was a melting pot of the uncanny and unexplainable. Their stories ranged from inexplicable system crashes and strange apparitions on video calls to personal accounts of spectral whispers through headphones. Even some were claiming their AI personal assistants had started speaking in tongues. Just imagine /X/ on steroids. This board, however, was more than just the usual conspiracy theories. The sheer number of incidents, their sporadic nature, the detailed accounts of tech-savvy users failing to find an earthly explanation, it made me pause, a flicker of unease threading through me. The paranormal has always been an interesting, albeit abstract, concept to me. I'm not dismissive of it, but I've always found comfort in the logical, the explainable. While sifting through the digital chaos, a particular thread titled The Shadow Codex piqued my interest. A thread teeming with frantic narratives and vague cautionary tales penned by a user named Cortex Phantom. Among the clutter of posts, one stood out, a cryptic, encrypted file ominously titled Demon's Whisper. I've encountered countless clandestine files during my tenure, each hiding keys to the locks of my investigations. The Demon's Whisper seemed like it could be one such key, maybe an encoded message or a hidden breadcrumb to lead me to the source of these anomalies. I let out a low sigh as I stared at the encrypted file. Downloading files from unknown sources was never without risks. It always set off a quiet alarm in the back of my mind, reminding me of the potential digital landmines I could be walking into. But as part of my job, I had learned to weigh the risks against the potential rewards. The careful dance of curiosity and caution was a familiar one. I remembered a case from a few years back where a similarly obscure file led me to a worm that had been slowly eating away at a corporation's security infrastructure. Despite the inherent risks, my foray into the digital unknown had been vindicated. I decided to take the plunge, encased within my virtual machine, a fortress of firewalls and isolated sandboxes. With a series of deft keystrokes, I set all my security options to the highest, prepping for potential digital fallout. Each click closer to the download felt like a step deeper into an unexplored cave. At that moment, I believed I was simply unearthing another piece of this complex puzzle. I thought that Demon's Whisper would be another mysterious yet manageable obstacle. But I was wrong. As the decryption software did its job, the file unraveled not into a clue to my perpetrator but into a haunting phrase that would soon seep into every corner of my reality: shadow dwells within. It was far from the solution I had anticipated. I devoted the next few hours to examining Demon's Whisper. My screen illuminated the room as I traced through the intricate web of code, dissecting each line twice over. At the surface, it was a complex yet seemingly harmless array of encrypted data. As I delved deeper, peculiarities emerged: recurring snippets of nonsensical data, obfuscated commands, sequences that seemed to replicate themselves in a bizarrely organic fashion. Despite the oddities, I couldn't pinpoint any concrete threats or leads. The file was just a maze of riddles layered with digital noise. Frustrated, I concluded it was simply a cleverly designed decoy to mislead curious minds like mine. Unresolved mysteries have a way of gnawing at your psyche. As fascinating as the file was, I knew keeping such an unpredictable element in my system was unwise. As I hovered the mouse over the delete button, I was momentarily frozen by a fleeting sense of disappointment. All that built up for a dead end. With a reluctant sigh, I clicked delete. A strange sensation washed over me as the file vanished from my drive. The room seemed colder, the hum of my computer louder. I shrugged it off, attributing it to the late hour and the eye strain. But then my screen flickered, displaying what looked like snippets of the same code from the deleted file. A cold dread prickled at the back of my neck. I frantically ran a system diagnostics check, but it came back clean. The screen returned to normal as abruptly as it had glitched. Then, in the eerie silence, my speakers crackled to life, whispering a distorted echo of a phrase from the file: shadow dwells within. My heart pounded as the words lingered in the air, a sinister serenade that threatened to shatter my composed demeanor. I swiftly muted the speakers, staring at the now silent machine in disbelief. A chill swept over me as if the room itself had taken a deep, cold breath. I sat there in the computer screen's glow, fear creeping into my veins. I could rationalize system glitches, but this? It was as if the digital entity had manifested itself in my very workspace. I simply made myself believe it was a coincidence or a trick of my mind scaring itself. I had dismissed the claims of the paranormally inclined users on the message board, but now, I was the one sitting in a dark room, feeling the tendrils of the inexplicable encroach upon my reality. I was afraid, confused, and in deep waters that my knowledge of code and cyberspace hadn't prepared me for. The sun of a new day brought no respite. Strange occurrences now followed me beyond the confines of my workspace. Digital devices I owned began acting oddly. My smartphone screen sometimes flickers, showing glimpses of the same strange code I had encountered. My smartwatch would vibrate randomly, displaying nonsensical strings of data instead of the time. Even my smart home system seemed to be in the grip of this digital haunting, the thermostat fluctuating wildly, lights flickering on and off at their own accord. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Perhaps it was a newly made worm or virus that had made its way through my devices, new enough to bypass all my current era security. But the nature of these disturbances felt less like malicious software and more like a presence. The digital world had been my playground for years, but now it felt tainted and hostile. The familiar hum of my computer was now a haunting reminder of the inexplicable. The boundary between my professional and private life began to blur, replaced with a mounting dread that made my home feel alien and unfamiliar. To my growing horror, these occurrences became more frequent, more intrusive. More distorted whispers would echo from my speakers, the chilling phrase "shadow dwells within" now a regular, unwelcome intrusion. I would find my computer on in the middle of the night, the screen pulsating with the eerie glow of that nonsensical code. Sleep became a luxury, each waking moment dominated by an oppressive sense of unease. My eyes would dart to each digital display, anticipating the next bizarre occurrence. Anxiety clouded me, replacing the analytical calm of my professional persona with a man living on a razor's edge of fear. But as disturbing as the developments were, a part of me remained stubbornly defiant. I refused to be intimidated by what seemed like a digital poltergeist. Driven by a mix of fear and determination, I decided to dive back into the murky depths of the Shadow Codex. The thread was still there, exactly where I found it. Equipped with a new resolve, I meticulously gathered every information I had, cryptic message and anomaly. Each clue was a lifeline back into the digital abyss, a breadcrumb on the path to my unseen tormentor. On the message board, Cortex Phantom's posts took a more ominous tone. Rereading them felt like descending into a dark well, the words a spiral into madness. The thread was a digital relic, a testament to the silent chaos that the Codex had apparently unleashed on others before me. When I first re-encountered the haunting phrase "shadow dwells within," my blood ran cold. But fear was now my fuel. With each repetition of the phrase, I felt less like a victim and more like a hunter closing in on his prey. Hours turned into days, each instance of the phenomenon pushing me further down the rabbit hole. It was a battle of attrition, me against the abstract horror lurking in the depths of cyberspace. The Shadow Codex was an enigma, a digital wraith that defied definition. As the lines between my work and the creeping terror blurred, so did the boundary between my mind and the digital. I started seeing the haunting code in my dreams, the patterns weaving themselves into the fabric of my nightmares. Every digital flicker, distorted whisper, and chilling message were all signposts to my slowly eroding sanity. By the end of the week, I was a shadow of my former self. My once pristine workspace was now a storm-ravaged landscape of discarded coffee cups and scattered notes. My reflection in the dark screen was a haggard, haunted face, ice white with a terror that had become my constant companion. I was adrift in a sea of digital horror, a lone sailor battling a storm that defied understanding. The code was no longer just an anomaly in the digital realm, it was an eldritch entity, a relentless force slowly corroding my reality's edges. The seemingly random sequences started to make a twisted kind of sense in my subconscious, forming a grotesque pattern that invaded my every thought. Yet when I tried to formulate these thoughts, they would quickly lose sense. It was like knowing the definition of a word but not being able to name it. The Codex was reaching out from the digital realm into my mind, reshaping my sanity into its own terrifying image. As the toll of my descent into the Codex became increasingly tangible, the once familiar digital landscape had transformed into an abstract nightmare. The culmination of the horror was not just the code but the creeping realization of my own insignificance, my inability to comprehend the depth of the abyss I had stumbled into. I was losing myself, piece by piece, my sanity slowly succumbing to the darkness of the pits I was delving into. By the time I looked away from the screen, my surroundings were painted with the echo of the horrific code. I was now a prisoner in my own home, the walls whispering the chilling chorus, "Shadow dwells within." As I descended into a darkness that was both digital and psychological, one thing was clear: the Shadow Codex wasn't just dwelling within my machines. It was in my mind. It had become a part of me. Each day, my reality became a hellscape of twisted code and creeping shadows. The Codex dominated every waking moment, the anomaly that was now a leviathan consuming my life. My mind felt like a battleground, a storm-tossed sea in the grip of a monstrous entity. Driven by desperation, I threw myself into my work, hoping to find a solution, a way to rid the Codex from my reality. I spent countless hours poring over every line of code, every fragment of the bizarre sequences, trying to discern some pattern, some key that could unlock the nightmare I was trapped in. But every attempt to decipher the Codex was met with failure. It was like trying to comprehend a language from a long-dead civilization, its meanings obscured by the sands of time and the vast void of cyberspace. The more I tried to decipher it, the more my mind was consumed by its eldritch patterns. Sleep became a forgotten luxury. My meals were consumed in front of my screen, my appetite overtaken by a hunger for answers. Every personal boundary, every sanity-preserving routine was lost in the wake of the Codex. Even the simple act of leaving my workspace filled me with dread. Every time I stepped away from my computer, I was assaulted by the echoes of the Codex. My once safe haven was gone. Each failed attempt to wrest control from the Codex only deepened the darkness swallowing my reality. Yet, paradoxically, the closer I inched towards madness, the more determined I became. A part of me clung to the belief that I could make it to the other end of the tunnel, that this was my way to fight back. It was a beacon of hope in a sea of despair, a desperate lifeline in the face of ever-encroaching darkness. But with every failed attempt, the Codex's grip on my reality tightened. My mind was now a maelstrom of digital horrors, my sanity reduced to a fragile thread dangling over an abyss of madness. I was caught in a perverse dance with the Codex, each step dragging me deeper into its shadowy realm. The boundary between my mind and the Codex was becoming increasingly blurred, my thoughts echoing with its haunting patterns. My once rational mind was now an echo chamber of a monstrous entity, my sanity slowly being eroded by the ceaseless whisper. It was no longer just a digital anomaly, it was my reality, my nightmare, my inescapable fate. In a desperate bid for sanity, I finally decided to do the unthinkable: disconnect from the digital world. I switched off my computer, my smartphone, and every device that linked me online. The hum of the technology, once a comforting presence, now sounded like the ominous drone of some unseen beast. The silence that followed felt like a gasp of fresh air after being submerged in a dark, turbulent ocean. But my respite was short-lived. Even devoid of the digital manifestations, the Codex's influence was not gone. The silence was not the comforting void I had hoped for, but a stark, cold reminder of my isolation. My home, once my sanctuary, was now a prison of silence and shadows. Without the hum of the machines, every creak of the house and every rustle of the wind outside seemed amplified. My mind, so used to the digital chatter, now started playing tricks on me. I saw patterns in the grain of the wooden floor and the plaster on the walls. The ordinary and mundane were twisted into grotesque reminders of the Codex. The physical world was not a refuge, it was just another canvas for the Codex to paint its horrors on. Shadow dwells within, the phrase had followed me out of the digital world, insinuating itself into the very fabric of my existence. The patterns in the wood, the whispers of the wind, and the play of shadows in the corners of my vision all echoed the haunting mantra. As the sun set, casting long, menacing shadows around the room, I missed the computer screen's eerie glow. The real world was no less terrifying than the digital. Each shadow seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as if the codex had extended its reach from the digital realm into the physical. The darkness around me seemed to throb with an unseen presence, the codex perhaps lingering at the edges of my perception. The creeping sense of horror was more profound and more intimate in the real world. It was no longer a threat lurking behind a screen, but an all-encompassing entity that had spilt into every corner of my existence. In the depth of my despair, I reached out to the only place that seemed to hold any semblance of understanding, the message board where it all began. With trembling hands and a mind teetering on the brink of insanity, I reconnected to the digital world, back to the humming chorus of machines and the eerie glow of the screen. The fear was tangible, but my desperation pushed me past it. A grim sense of nostalgia washed over me as the familiar form loaded on the screen. This was where my nightmare had started, and maybe, just maybe, where it could end. I poured out my story, every detail of my encounter with the codex, the bizarre happenings, my subsequent isolation, and the profound terror that now consumed my life. The words came out in a disjointed, chaotic stream, a madman's rambling to the void. I didn't sugarcoat my fear, didn't hold back my despair. I was beyond caring about sounding crazy or desperate. If anyone could understand, maybe offer some insight or help, it would be these fellow dwellers of the digital shadows. And then I waited, every passing second stretching into an agonizing eternity. I stared at the screen, the harsh light stinging my eyes, the silence of the room amplifying the pounding of my heart. I waited for a reply, any reply, a lifeline in the endless digital sea. The notification ping startled me, breaking the oppressive silence. My heart pounded in my chest as I opened a response. 2 words stared back at me, their brevity more chilling than any verbose response. Too late. A chill ran down my spine, the finality of the words echoing in my mind. It was like a death sentence, the crushing weight of my doomed fate. They held no sympathy, no offer of help, just a cold, hard acknowledgement of my plight. I was truly alone, left to face the monstrous codex and its terrifying grip on my reality. A sense of profound dread washed over me. This wasn't just a fight against a digital anomaly anymore. This was a battle for my sanity, my very existence, against an entity that had already claimed victory. The codex wasn't just in my computer or my home. It was in me, and according to someone who managed to look past my ramblings as insane gibberish, it was already too late. As the days bled into each other, my life became a relentless cycle of dread and despair. The codex's haunting echo never left me, persisting in my every thought and sense. I was trapped, lost within my own mind, and there was no way out. Each sunrise was not a new day but another descent into madness. I stopped trying to track time. Days, hours, minutes, they lost their meaning in the face of the all-consuming horror. Food lost its taste, sleep became a fleeting memory, and my once cherished solitude became a tormenting isolation. Each day was a test of endurance, a struggle to hold on to the last vestiges of my sanity. The house seemed to take on a life of its own, the walls whispering with the echoes of the codex. It was no longer a haven but a haunting reminder of my entrapment. I could see the codex's patterns in everything, the way the dust particles floated in the sunbeams, the way the shadows played on the walls. It was as if the codex had woven itself into the very fabric of reality. I was living in its shadow, my life a twisted reflection of its nightmarish design. I started to fear sleep, knowing that it would only bring more terrifying visions. But staying awake was no better. Every waking moment was filled with the creeping horror of the codex. The outside world became a distant memory. I couldn't remember the last time I had left the house, seen another human face, heard a voice other than my own. The codex had effectively isolated me, cutting me off from the world, my life reduced to a terrifying echo of the digital nightmare. My once robust spirit was breaking, my will eroding under the ceaseless onslaught of the codex. The shadows grew darker, the silence more oppressive, and my despair deeper. I was losing myself, my identity being swallowed by the monstrous entity. I could no longer tell where I ended and the codex began. Its patterns had etched themselves into my thoughts, its influence seeping into every corner of my mind. I was not just a victim of the codex, I was becoming a part of it. And in the cold, heartless world it had created, I was utterly alone. And the worst part? The silence, the isolation, the creeping terror, they weren't the result of some demonic entity or a malevolent ghost. They were the product of my own making, the consequence of my journey into the abyss. Shadow dwells within, the phrase had become a cruel prophecy, a chilling truth that was impossible to deny. Through lucid moments of clarity, I kept digging, my mind clawing from the deep depths it had sank. I am a digital spelunker lost in the abysmal depths of the Shadow Codex, its endless chasm drawing me in with an irresistible pull. However, the more I tried to understand it and decipher its language's cryptic patterns, the more I was consumed by it. Despite this, the pulsating symbols on my computer screen had become my obsession. In a trance-like state, each moment, each hour, was consumed by the pursuit of comprehension, the tantalizing possibility of a breakthrough, despite where that'd leave me in the end. It could be salvation, or it could be my demise. It'd finally be an end regardless. I labored over intricate patterns woven through labyrinthine forums, drew and redrew cryptic symbols, seeking connections, finding none. Yet, with every pattern I unraveled, every theory I spun, and every code I broke, I found it harder to remember who I am. Memories of my life before the Codex, before this haunting dread, become as elusive as the solutions I was seeking. Faces and names blurred into obscurity, replaced by the mesmerizing patterns of the Codex. I was losing myself in this digital abyss, feeding the very beast I was trying to slay. Each deciphered code leads to another, a never-ending maze of horror, resisting understanding. And I realized the terrifying truth: my futile attempt to conquer the Codex wasn't a path to salvation, it was a death march into oblivion. I understand the full scope of the Codex's monstrous design with chilling clarity. This isn't a war I can win. With every step I took to fight back, I was simply sinking deeper into its clutches. And thus, I descend, not fighting, not resisting, just falling into the endless, inky depths of the Shadow Codex's realm. The futility of it all was crushing, finding myself to be a pawn in a game I cannot understand, let alone win. And finally, my mind snapped. I fall into a rhythm, dance with insanity and the unknown. The message board becomes my canvas, my stage, my confessional. I spill secrets of another realm onto the page, ideas beyond comprehension, names that no human tongue has uttered, descriptions of entities so foreign, so otherworldly, they defy our reality. Alien landscapes that extend into endless twilight, creatures formed from impossibilities, names that ring with an ethereal echo. Each post is a chilling sonnet to the Codex, a testament to my fall. These aren't just symbols or coded messages, they are whispers from the abyss, confessions from the edge of sanity. Every time I hit refresh, my posts, my mad ramblings, they vanished, devoured by the digital void. Each disappearance echoes the ephemerality of my sanity. But it doesn't matter, I keep posting, and I keep pouring the madness onto the screen. I am driven not by hope of salvation but a need to express, to expel the Codex's influence, even if only momentarily. Then, finally, I resurface. The madness, the chaotic symphony of incomprehensible thoughts, recedes like a storm passing. I find myself sitting in front of my computer screen, fingers poised over the keyboard, my last post an amalgamation of cryptic symbols and alien words displayed on the screen. I hit refresh. The post disappears, as it always does. But a familiar post catches my eye in the refreshed list of threads. The original thread of the Shadow Codex, the digital Pandora's box that began my descent into this never-ending nightmare. Compelled by a sense of dread, I click on it. There, highlighted in the dim light of my room, is a new comment on the thread. It's from the original poster, the unknown harbinger of my ordeal. The message is as simple as it is chilling. The codex has been updated. Whatever I did, it seems it's ready for the next person to download and add to the annals of their sacred texts. As you may have guessed, I am an artist. As an artist, I love to explore different styles, but I am old school in the sense that I refrain from using digital means to make my art. There is an entirely distinct elegance and fulfillment in watching my art grow from pencil scribbles to a vibrant depiction of whatever dominated my mind's eye at the time. While I would love to promote my artwork, it will soon become apparent why I cannot share much that could lead back to me. A few weeks ago, I started to grow tired of painting the same old style of portraits, objects, and scenes. I craved for something new, and I began exploring again. I should mention that I am, in my free time, an avid user of the Deepweb. Do not get me wrong, I do nothing illicit or taboo like sell drugs or find hitmen to hire. I just love seeing all the peculiar and intriguing things the Deepweb has to offer. Therefore, while going through this drought of inspiration, I found a bustling art community on the Deepweb that was entirely unique. Named the Nightmare Artists, this website was dedicated to disturbing and unsettling artwork. I opened the website, and I was immediately fascinated. This site was a web forum not unlike Reddit. Each post was a picture of a piece of artwork that someone had made. However, they all revolved around themes that would be considered dark by even the most depraved of art enthusiasts. Despite their disturbing theme, I was encapsulated by their detail. As I went through them, I grew to develop an uncanny admiration for the effort and time that must have gone into each piece of work. Meanwhile, the forum itself was bustling. Posts were being made every few hours and commenters consistently had something to say. There was even a detailed guide on how the site could be located after a domain change. I could not believe I had not heard of this place before. The artwork, however alarming, left me in awe. Each piece looked meticulously and skillfully made. Even the milder ones, such as the depictions of mental illness and self-harm, were memorable. I fondly recall a sketch of a vortex of letters and words sinking into the gray matter of a rotting but alive human head. It was a strong allegory of ADHD and dyslexia. Others depicted grotesque scenes of carnage and violence. One of my favorites was an oil painting of a gladiator smashing the heads of two peasants together. While the idea itself was fairly primitive and non-abstract, the intricacy of each droplet of blood on the glistening golden armor, coupled with the unadulterated look of panic and fear on the peasants' faces, made the painting pristine. These were all amazing, but the ones that I still have strong memories of are the ones more fantastical and unique in their uncanniness. These are the ones that made me question the mental state of the artist. An acrylic painting that stuck out distinctly depicted a weird being that was a ramshackle abomination of different animal parts knitted together with a human head. A leathery crocodile-like hide attached to an abdomen of long gray tentacles that seemed to levitate the thing off the ground where the animals whose parts had been used lay. The thing had more appendages protruding from its upper torso that resembled the furry arms of a gorilla. Where the chest should have been sat a large eye with a thin, inquisitive pupil that seemed to glimpse directly into my soul. While I would go on with these descriptions, it would all be peripheral to the point of me sharing my experience with you. Suffice to say that this online forum was a treasure trove for artists and enthusiasts that admired and made work that was less conventional. I spent an entire day gawking at the works before I was overcome by tenacity and motivation. I was inspired. I was no longer in my frustrated creative confusion. I had decided that I would make my very own piece of unnerving art. Perhaps this could be a niche that invigorated me to produce something beyond the usual half-decent mediocrity. Over the next week, I worked consistently. Day and night, I would be in my studio working on creating something marvelous in its unfiltered macabre form. While I had peered on the edge of such a style in my artistic career, I had never worked with such a conviction on any of my other work. A thought penetrated my determined state. Could this be it? The genre I had always been looking for. Did I no longer have to aimlessly make half-hearted pieces to keep my fans content? At the week's end, I was done. I uploaded my pride onto the forum under my alias LawlessCreator24. The artwork in question was an oil painting of crows picking at the corpses of fallen soldiers on a battlefield, while a beautiful sunset painted the sky in a magical amalgam of pinks and reds in the background. I named it Life Goes On and uploaded it onto the site. I did not anticipate the popularity it would go on to garner. My painting held first place on the forum for an entire day. I was elated and had already begun planning for another piece. When I opened the website the next day, I noticed that I had received a message from a prolific and respected artist on the website that went by the alias Machination of Doom. It read, "Hello Lawless Creator 24. I absolutely loved your most recent upload. Could I know what brand of paint you used?" After sharing the brand in question, I conversed with him further about his art style and creations he loved most. He seemed very insistent on finding the right colors to make his art as realistic as possible. After half an hour of text conversation, he sent me the following message. "I noticed that in a discussion in the comments you mentioned you were from the San Francisco Bay Area. I live there too. Would you like to meet up for a drink sometime?" I was ecstatic. Not only had I made a piece of art I was fully satisfied with, but I was already budding up with my contemporaries in the genre. We quickly arranged to meet at a famous bar for the very next evening itself, and I spent the entire night in a restless fit as I wondered how things would play out. Come that evening, I walked into the bar and texted him. "I'm here in the dark blue shirt next to the entrance." I saw a man walk up to me. He smiled as he prepared to greet me. He looked somewhat rat-like, to put it lightly. He couldn't be more than 5 feet 4 inches, and I had a mild suspicion that he was using shoe lifts after witnessing his awkward gait. He had a chinless mouth with teeth that seemed to protrude beyond his lower lip. His oily skin had a yellowish hue to it, and his coarse mane seemed to shrivel in self-embarrassment at the end of each hair. Despite this, it looked like he took care of himself. His teeth glistened white, and his hair was as neatly combed as it could be. He wore a dress shirt and tapered pants. I thought he had either gotten off work, or he was not too versed with trendy attire. I, being average-looking myself, did not dwell on his appearance. "Hey Lawless Creator, call me Carl," he said with a tinge of awkwardness as he walked up to me and extended his arm in an invitation for a handshake. He had an odd accent I could not put my finger on. He sounded nasally and somewhat monotonous. As he drew closer with his handshake, I caught a whiff of his odor. The heavy use of deodorant and perfume seemed to mask the scent of rot and decay. I wrote this off as innocuous, and I was still optimistic about the meeting. "Hi Carl. Great that we finally met. I'm Mark. Let's grab those stools over there," I responded, smiling. As we sat down and began enjoying beers, our conversation shifted away from trivial matters like the weather or current city affairs and towards our artwork. I love what you did with that painting with the crows. Thank you. It's great to receive all the appreciation. I honestly didn't expect it to do that well. I responded. I was thoroughly impressed with your most recent piece too. The one with the cats and the restrained man. I shot back a compliment about one of his most acclaimed works on the site. Thank you. I was wondering what you thought of it. It took a lot of time and sweat. Here, let me show you, he chuckled as he reached for his phone. Sure. I eagerly responded, wondering what he was about to show me. His phone screen lit to life, and he perfunctorily tapped at it before turning it to me. I recognized the image straight away. It had been up on the website a few days ago, and everyone had been blown away by its detail. The website had featured the painting of a man sitting in a chair with his hands and legs restrained with two cats in his lap curiously clawing at a bloody opening in his abdomen as the man stared down in pure terror. This image on the phone screen seemed to be a, somehow, more elaborate version of it. I was perplexed until I scooched my bar stool closer and peered forward to look more closely. This was not the realism of an artist's work, nor was this the clever editing of a piece of artwork to make it look more realistic. Then, I noticed the timestamp. It was not a piece of art. It was a picture shot on a camera. As I came to the harrowing revelation, my heart began to race, and my skin grew damp in a cold sweat. Neat, isn't it? I froze in place and looked into his eyes. They were crazed and manic in their anticipation. Before another word could be uttered, I ran out of the bar as fast as my feet could carry me. I rushed home and sat petrified, my mind unable to construe anything besides fear. As I slowly gained my composure, I realized that I must have dropped my phone during the run since I could not find it anywhere. I booted up my computer to change my passwords and delete my account on that godforsaken website, and I saw that I had just gotten an email from myself. I thought someone may have found my phone, but then I read it. My name is Special Agent Barry Allen. It's actually my code name, given to me by my colleagues. You may recognize this name from the comic book character The Flash. I was given this name due to my quickness to obtain IP addresses, bypass firewalls and hack into certain deep websites and shut them down. That is my area of expertise. However, I've also been assigned to a joint task force before which tracked and arrested drug runners, firearms dealers, and human trafficking rings. Believe it or not, the federal government is everywhere. Social media, Reddit, YouTube. You name it. We have our guys on it. We monitor everything. That being said, the FBI only has jurisdiction to operate within the borders of the United States. In this new digital age we find ourselves living, cybercrime is much more of a direct threat. Now more than ever. Yes, in the past we feared as a nation biological and chemical warfare. As an example, right after September 11th, the United States had an anthrax attack. In the FBI, it was known as Amerithrax. Letters were mailed containing anthrax spores to several news media offices and to Democratic Senators Tom Dashley and Patrick Leahy, killing 5 people and infecting 17 others. Once the victim opened the letters, they would immediately be exposed to the spores. Inhaling them is the most deadly form of the attacks, and it quickly destroys your immune and respiratory systems. Back then there were no known cures, and it was difficult to treat as the symptoms oftentimes confused doctors. The death rate once exposed was nearly 95%. No one was ever officially arrested or tried as the primary suspect for this horrific crime. If you ask me though, The scariest part of this investigation is where it led us, to a lab on an army base. Essentially, the US Army was weaponizing anthrax using independent scientists specializing in microbiological warfare. Of course though, if you wanted to bring down Western civilization today, all you'd have to do is manipulate or destroy our satellites and we would be back in the Dark Ages. Computers, banks, grocery stores and cell phones, power plants, even the water filtration system runs with electronics and the ability to communicate with satellites. Essentially, our world now depends on this. It's scary to think about, especially when 14-year-olds are hacking into the largest banks in the world from their mother's basement. Somehow they are able to bypass the best security systems we know of. I personally believe they are using password skimmers. We joke in my department that in order to work for us, you simply only need to be smarter than a teenager. My background is in IT while in the military. While serving, I also obtained several certifications and degrees in my field. I worked alongside someone I never thought I would. Turns out the federal government oftentimes hires former hackers to consult for them. In fact, they have an army of internet soldiers at their disposal. I was actually trained by a convicted felon. It's been said he is one of the best hackers in the world. Eventually, I was put in contact with men in the FBI. Essentially went through a series of rigorous tests to determine my operating field of work. After seeing our skills, they then placed myself and the felon on the Cyber Anti-Terrorism Unit, or CAT as we call it. Our first assignment was to locate a man on the Deepweb known only as Captain Death. He runs this anonymous site in which the viewers would donate Bitcoin to watch unspeakable acts of torture, mutilation and murder, oftentimes called red rooms. After searching for a while, clicking on every single link given to us, we found the exact link which directed us to the host site. We visited the website. For a moment the page was completely black, so we waited a few moments. Suddenly a bright red colored text appears across the top of the screen. Welcome to the House of Pain. Tonight's events will commence in 2 minutes. Enjoy. Looking over at my colleague, Jeff begins penetrating the site's security systems, attempting to find the IP address of the host's location. Viewing the site still with my eyes locked onto the screen. Using my laptop separate from Jeff's. The monitor goes black, then a video attempts to load. Buffering now for several minutes. Any luck, Jeff? I ask. I'm searching for a weakness in the security firewall. Give me a minute, he responds. Frustrated, I say, we may not have a minute. Using access control, Jeff was able to find and manipulate the user's login information, bringing down the video before it began. Believe it or not, one of the weakest points to a website can oftentimes be its login feature. Jeff found a vulnerability in the source code software and exploited it. Still haven't found the guy, as that process is much more difficult. For now, we can rest a little bit easier knowing his account is compromised. The best hack is when you can invade a security system and not ever be noticed. This was not one of those instances. Who are you? Appears on Jeff's computer screen. He responds quickly, the Dark Knight, in bold green text as he looks over the offender's account, attempting to track down banking information, recent transactions, even Bitcoin exchange. Searching over the vast amount of data pouring into the site. Seems they have gone through great lengths to keep themselves hidden from the public. The identity of the perp is still unknown. Patting Jeff on the shoulder, I thank him for saving my eyes from witnessing God only knows what. I suppose for now it's a small victory. Let's take a break, Jeff, I urge. Shutting down our laptops, we exit the dark, cold room we sat in with monitors, computers, servers, and many other electronic components all around us. One thing to remember, heat is the enemy of electronics. And for some strange reason, we enjoy freezing our asses off while hacking. Walking outside, Jeff lights up a cigarette and takes a drag. Putting on his sunglasses, want one? He asks. No thanks, they really break my concentration. I don't seem to function well with that in my system, I reply. He scoffs and quietly whispers, amateur, while choking and coughing. I smile and look up. Yeah, well, at least I can breathe, I say, laughing. A smile forming on New York face, we begin walking to a nearby restaurant. My phone lights up and rings loudly. It's my supervisor. Go for Barry, I speak confidently. My boss is breathing heavily into the phone and says sternly, what's the news on Captain Death? I begin to inform him our progress and our struggles. Keep me posted, Barry. Good work. He says. Not telling him Jeff did most of the work, I feel bad for taking credit for this one. Reaching the doors of the bar and grill, I notice a man sitting in the corner of the restaurant with his family. Jumping back quickly while peering around the corner. Jeff gives me a strange look as I inform him that man is a fugitive from an earlier investigation. I call in for backup and sit back in our unmarked unit waiting for the cavalry to arrive as he is armed and extremely dangerous. 15 minutes pass as backup swarms the parking lot. We exit the vehicle and surround the building. Rushing in 12 men strong, guns drawn, we make the arrest. Fortunately, he did not resist. No civilians were harmed on the takedown. This man has been on the run for months, moving from state to state. I had previously set up a sting operation to illegally buy stolen guns from the man, which had been arranged through the Deepweb. However, this particular sting was an in-person arms deal. He appeared very spooked and got away from us before the transaction was made. After searching his panel van today, we found an entire armory of weapons. A few days pass and we now have a search warrant issued by the judge for his last known address, confiscating all of his computers, hard drives and weapons. My partner and I found a hidden room below the living room floorboards with $1.4 million in it. It also had passports and other documents. He was ready to flee the country for sure. Why he was out in public is beyond me. Though oftentimes, men like him feel they are untouchable and above the law. It's several weeks later and work has been slow. Not sure if that is good or bad, until today that is. I began chatting on forums and meeting interesting characters in chat rooms. On the clear net and deep web. Today I met a dark, shadowy figure online. He claims to have worked with a group of hackers who specializes in debit and credit card theft online. Playing the part, ask in a private chat, how much does this pay? Moments pass with no answer. I sit and wait for a response. A message appears with a link and a phone number. Contact him for a trial run if you do well. He'll set you up with further work, he writes. Thinking for a moment, finally an adversary worth hunting. Typing quickly, I say, who is he? Do you know him personally? He responds rapidly and the text box closes after he writes rule number 1, no names. Fortunately, I was able to copy the link and phone number before my computer screen went completely blank. Reaching for the burner phone I recently acquired, I begin dialing the number provided. It rings several times. No answer. So I check out the link I copied. Right before I click on it, my phone lights up and rings beside me, forcing me to jump out of my seat. Startled, I look at the cell phone, mildly confused as it reads unknown number. Quickly I answer the phone. A man on the other end speaks. How did you find this number? He asks. I informed him I was searching online for a while. I'm new and am looking for work. I was told you're the man to call if I wanted some action. I need the money, I implore. Competition is next week. Meet at this address. Winner gets a spot on my team. If you think you're up for the test, be on time, he demands. I thank him and abruptly hang up. Jeff comes over to my place. He has some info on low-level guys in the fraudulent/stolen debit card scheme. Using an unmarked and totally not suspicious surveillance van, we follow a few men on their day-to-day operations. For the most part, this portion of our job is the worst. Very daunting and boring. Sitting and waiting isn't exactly glamorous as the movies depict it to be. From what we can tell so far, these men are using credit card skimmers. Victims of credit card skimming are completely blindsided by the theft. They notice fraudulent charges on their accounts or money withdrawn from their accounts, but their credit and debit cards never left their possession. How did the theft happen? You may be wondering, what exactly is this? Credit card skimming is a type of credit card theft where crooks use a small device to steal credit card information in an otherwise legitimate credit or debit card transaction. When a credit or debit card is swiped through a skimmer, the device captures and stores all the details stored in the card's magnetic stripe. The stripe contains the credit card number and expiration date and the credit card holder's full name. Thieves use the stolen data to make fraudulent charges either online or with a counterfeit credit card. These men have been using these small devices all over the local area and surrounding states as well, targeting the nicer areas of town, attaching the devices to the ATMs, sitting a short distance away in their cars watching each victim approaching, laughing all the way to the bank, so to speak. After several days of stakeouts, our team makes the arrests, finding blank cards, machines, and large sums of cash on hand. After hours of interrogations, we learn a much bigger scheme is in the works. The men inform us that they were merely a distraction for a much larger crime. My supervisor gives us clearance to make a deal with them, lessening their charges if they are willing to cooperate. Speaking with the men for 3 more hours, we learn what's really going on. The next few days are extremely tense as our offices try to warn all the banks and even get the media involved. Calling every bank, big and small, we alert them of the situation that cybercriminals are poised to carry out an ATM cash out, an operation that gives thieves access to untold sums of money by bypassing security measures on an ATM. If successful, the operation has the potential to be a heist unlike any we've ever seen. The FBI has obtained unspecified reporting indicating cyber criminals are planning to conduct a global automated teller machine (ATM) cash-out scheme in the coming days, likely associated with an unknown card issuer breach and commonly referred to as an unlimited operation. These unlimited operations compromise financial institutions or payment processors by installing malware that allows hackers to exploit network access, allowing admin-level access. Once inside, they can disable fraud protection, raise maximum ATM withdrawal amounts and transaction limits, and withdraw large sums of money. Millions, potentially. All they'll need to carry out the attack are debit and credit card numbers found on the dark web, and dummy cards, also known as blanks, to attach the numbers to. The cyber criminals typically create fraudulent copies of legitimate cards by sending stolen card data to co-conspirators who imprint the data on reusable magnetic strip cards, such as gift cards purchased at retail stores. At a predetermined time, the co-conspirators withdraw account funds from ATMs using these cards. It's nearly a week later, and in preparing for my tests, I have my laptop ready in its case. I'm extremely nervous. The information given to me is that I am to meet at this very strange building on the outskirts of town. I have no idea what to expect. I must come in first place to become a member of the team and ultimately take down the leader of this cybercrime domestic terrorist. If things go according to his plan, he could potentially put the entire country on its knees and our banking systems would completely collapse. Chaos and madness will spread like wildfires. Millions of people unable to access their money will riot and destroy stores, stealing food and everything they can get their hands on. The police will be overrun and unable to do anything about it. The military would most certainly be called in an attempt to regain order. Mass hysteria ensues, to the extremes we have never seen before. I must stop him before it's too late. The day has come and I just received the call I've long avoided. It is time. The competition for top-tier hackers are meeting at this building in which I believe to have been abandoned. We are in the surveillance van, heading towards our destination. Our equipment is all packed up, wearing a wire on my chest. Hopefully they don't pat me down upon entry. Jeff is driving recklessly, as he has a bad habit of being late. Testing the audio in the back of the van. Generally this is done days before an operation. However, we are rather short on time. Not pointing any fingers. Leaving the city limits, we now enter a heavily wooded area. There is only one way in. The road is turning into rubble. Small rocks are shooting from our tires. Lights are fading behind us as we venture further into the forest. Jeff now using high beams. We notice it's grown quiet, other than hearing the tires on the gravel road. There seems to be less and less wildlife in the area. I got this feeling like we are being watched. Checking my cell phone, we have lost all signal. Is this a trap? I thought. Our other equipment seems to work just fine. I can begin to see dim lights in the distance. We must be nearing the competition. You ready for this? Jeff asks while blowing smoke out the window. I start to sweat the backdraft of the smoke billowing back into my window. Yeah, I'm ready. You should really consider cutting back on the smokes, I utter. Just then, a pack of Marlboros are hurled in my direction. We're here, Barry. Make sure you have everything. Jeff commands. I'm all set. I reply. Jeff stops the van on the gravel. Exiting the vehicle, I grab my backpack while adjusting my clothes. I found some glasses with regular lens in them, so as to look the part. Walking towards the building, I speak quietly into my chest microphone. Test chest mic. How do you read me? I ask. Jeff's growly voice comes into my earpiece, loud and clear. Good luck, he responds. One odd thing I notice right away as my feet kick up against the rocks on the ground is that there is only one vehicle other than ours. A large bus. Slightly confused, I look in every direction while also investigating the bus. Seems as though it's empty. Later I would learn everyone else met up at a different location and they all took the bus to get here. Reaching the suspicious-looking building, I reach for the door handle. As the door opens with little force, loud music hits me as well as bright flashing lights. What the hell? Walking around, I find what I was looking for in a back room. You're late, take your seat, a well-dressed man says, seeing one empty seat left, grabbing my laptop from the bag. Booting it up and joining their local area network. Connection established. A strange software automatically downloads on my laptop. The man who greeted me walks over to examine my screen. We will wait until this participant is ready, he tells everyone else. Minutes pass and the program has finished installing. What's on my screen is a DoD login showing the username and password empty fields. Okay everyone, your first task will be to crack the code and gain entry into this system. You have 10 minutes to access the servers and find the login information. The first 10 people who accomplish this task will advance to the next round. Good luck, your time starts now, he explained. A voice come over my earpiece once more. Okay, Barry. I'm linked up with your laptop. I can see everything you see. I will now control everything remotely. How do you read? Jeff says quietly. I hear you. I'll let you take over from here. I reply. My colleague begins typing away like mad. It's been said he can type up to 153 words per minute. Looking at my screen, the computer is changing rapidly, each window appearing with different streams of code. Almost like what you've seen in the movie The Matrix, which I suppose is a foreign language to most people. It can seem overwhelming at times. Normally, I would be doing this. Jeff is far better and faster than I. It's not worth the risk. This task is far too important. There is much at stake here. As he continues going in through the firewall, more boxes open and close all over the screen. I appear as if I'm typing away. As there is a man walking around watching each potential hacker perform their duties. Not sure if it's the leader of this anonymous group. He is in a dark suit and all I can see is the flashes of light from each monitor. Maybe it's just my paranoia, but I feel like he keeps shooting me these awfully suspicious looks. Have to stay focused. Come on, Barry. You need this. Concentrate. Keep your head in the game. I can't lose myself in the moment. Oh, wait a minute. I just now remembered. I'm not even in control of my machine. Jeff, I sure as hell hope you know what you're doing. Barry, you don't know I just heard everything you said, right? Now shut the hell up and let me work. We only have 4 minutes left. Jeff urges. Well then hurry up, you lung cancer having prick. I'm dying in here. Must be 90 degrees, I whisper. Just then, access granted appears on my screen. The login information has been hacked. Instantly I jump up as if I've just won in bingo. I'm in. I yell loudly to the man. He nods and another man comes over to confirm the legitimacy of my claim. After confirmation is given a few moments later, myself and several others are ushered to another room not first seen when you enter the building. First we are taken down a flight of unkempt stairs, creaking and groaning with every step, feeling as it could give out at any moment. Our group reaches the bottom of the stairs and are now on a platform. A mechanical whirring is heard as we now are being lowered even further underground. Where the hell are we going? One man asks in fear. Silence, fool, says the man in a nice dark suit. Finally the platform stops as I would approximate we are at least 80 feet underground. A long dark hallway is before us, lit dimly by low-hanging lights, which never seem to end as far as we can see. Walking for several minutes, I no longer hear my associate in my earpiece, so I remove it quickly before anyone notices. There is a musty smell that has disturbed me immediately coming down here. It grows stronger the closer we get to the direction we are headed. Am last in line, only in front of what I assess is a hired goon. Stopping for a moment and pushed forward on my upper back near my shoulders. I swear if I wasn't trying to save the world right now, I'd just take out my service pistol and blow this cocksucker away. No one would miss him. We reach a large old wooden door with absolutely no handle or markings of any kind. The leader pushes up against the wall near the door and it opens slowly. Everyone pours in single file line. There is a large wooden table with chairs almost like a conference room. Take your seats, please, the leader addresses. You're all probably wondering what the hell we are doing down here. Well, you're here for a job. Also, I didn't want any interference of any kind, just in case the government is watching us. There's no way they could possibly hear what's being said this far underground. He explains. Congratulations to each of you that has moved on to the next round. You 10 have been chosen to advance to the next stage in the competition. This following task will include various stages of difficulty. You will be chosen at random by a computer, so it's completely fair. Each of you are to hack into some of the world's largest banks and bring down their servers. Please come back to this location. Your names have been taken down and we shall contact you if anything changes. I expect to see all of you back with us same time next week. 6 days from now. That is all for now, thank you. The leader finishes and leaves the room first. Each man muttering and chatting loudly. I can hear only bits and pieces as everyone is talking loudly. Minutes pass and we are escorted out of the building. Everyone begins walking towards the bus. I veer towards my van and am stopped by the same man who pushed me earlier. Just where the hell do you think you're going? He asks. Oh, I didn't get the meetup spot. I had to drive here. I respond while swatting away his hand from my shoulder. The man reaches in his pocket, pulling out a card. Be at this location and be on time or we will find someone else, the man urges. I snatch the card and stuff it into my wallet. Reaching the van, I hop in and drive away. What the hell happened in there? Jeff demands. I begin informing him of everything that took place and explain the situation. He nods and tells me good work. Wait a minute, this doesn't look right. Jeff looks at me puzzled. Something is off. I don't remember any of this. Now there's a fork in the road. Is this the way we came? I thought I remembered it being only a one-way in and one-way out. You went off the gravel road. Move over, let me drive. Jeff says. Hey, sorry man, I'm a hacker. Not a tracker. Just get us the hell out of here. I'm more lost than Atlantis. About an hour passes and Jeff somehow gets us out of the woods and back to the main road. We head back towards my house. But suddenly he makes a detour. Screw this man. After all that I need a damn drink. You down? Jeff asks. Well, in the words of my father, if you have time to think, you have time to drink, I utter proudly. Then again, Dad was a major alcoholic, so perhaps that's bad advice. Well, alright then, Jeff says as he floors the gas pedal. Roughly 20 minutes later we arrive at his favorite bar where he immediately opens up a tab. I'm worried as I've heard he drinks like a fish. Not to mention we are both armed in a bar. Yes, that's illegal, but screw you, I am FBI. Remember folks, laws are made to be broken, otherwise, I'd be out of a job. Crap, I think I have lost my colleague. I begin walking around the establishment and am stunned to see this gorgeous blonde woman cross my path. We strike up a conversation and I soon forget about Jeff. Now, while he is a grown man, I am sure he will be fine. She asks what I do for work and of course I lie. Never know when you need to run a background check on someone. Besides, telling the whole world you're an undercover FBI agent isn't exactly the best idea. Or so the Bureau instructed us. We continued chatting for a while and eventually part ways as it began to get late into the night. We exchange numbers and she leaves gracefully. I walk outside to see the van still parked in the same spot. A bit puzzled, I go over to inspect the van, thinking maybe he just passed out in the front seat. I arrive at the driver's side door and open it to find all of our equipment gone and Jeff is nowhere to be found. Freaking out, I run back into the bar, searching all over, even behind the bar next to the register. The bathrooms are empty and it's closing time. I have no idea where he went. Did he leave with someone or was abducted possibly? Either way, I am completely dead if my supervisor finds out about this. I have to find him and the equipment. And who the hell was that girl? Could she have something to do with this? I need answers. Oh no! I just realized my laptop is also missing. If that information gets in the wrong hands, it could have catastrophic consequences. The internet is a gigantic place. Some parts of the internet are funny, other parts of the internet are more serious, but certain parts of the internet are quite scary. Sometimes you don't even know what you're going to get. A random link can take you to somewhere funny or to somewhere creepy. You can't trust every link. Do not attempt to track down the source of every weird image you come across either. While browsing through my favorite subreddits one evening, I remembered a certain post I read once that I found interesting. It was a post about a leaked image that was possibly a classified image no one was supposed to see. I typed the title of the post, as I remembered it, into the search bar. I added quotations to narrow down the search. I looked through the search results for half an hour. I couldn't find the post. At one point, I found what I thought was the post, based on the title being a near match. I found this image on the dark web. It was taken by a government screenshot. I clicked on the post, hoping it was what I was looking for. It wasn't what I was looking for. It was a screenshot of an image of a squirrel with 24 long, sharp claws, and a mouth that took up most of its head. It had no jaw, just extra teeth. There were random numbers and letters at the top and bottom of the image. I didn't know what they meant, however. I don't remember the exact sequences either. I found it interesting. At first, I thought it was an image someone edited with Photoshop. 1 minute into looking at it, I noticed there was something real about it. It didn't look like a creepypasta edit or CGI animation. It was lifelike with a lot of realistic details. I started to get chills as I looked at it, so I scrolled down to read the comments. There were 3. This is probably fake. Where is that from? Probably just a leaked image from an upcoming movie. I didn't want to scroll back up. The image was a muscle-tightening level of scary. The people who make creepy video thumbnails would do anything to make edits that are as realistic and scary as that image. I dreaded the thought of looking at it again. I was, however, curious if there were any new comments. I refreshed the page. After refreshing, all 3 of the comments had been removed. I scrolled up a bit, noticing the post itself was removed as well. I was surprised, but then I noticed the post was made only 5 minutes earlier. While the image of the squirrel was terrifying, I was interested in finding its source. It looked too real to be fake. There's no way it was just photoshopped. That was all despite the fact it didn't even look like it was of this world. I wanted to find out where it originated from. Whether it was real or not too, in case it was somehow not real. I felt like I had looked at something I wasn't supposed to see. Something classified. Something that is being kept secret by a government. Something only I and a few internet strangers may have seen. I was already 21 years old, but I still had some spare time on my hands. Enough time to search for whatever it was I saw. I downloaded a VPN, then I did some research about the Deepweb. I downloaded Tor browser, then I began to dig through the hidden wiki. I knew it was likely filled with a bunch of FBI agents, but I wasn't looking for anything illegal. As long as I didn't click a bad link I'd be fine, I thought to myself. Of course, I did tremble at the idea of going into an innocent-looking link that turned out to be bad. I looked through the deep web for weeks, trying to find a trace of the demonic squirrel. But there were none. I did multiple puzzles in case any of them would lead to at least a trace of it. I didn't know how to complete most of the puzzles, but there were tips on the internet that helped me complete more of the puzzles than I could have otherwise. About a month in, I stumbled across a puzzle that was just 20 circles with weird symbols in between them. There was a timer that counted down from 1800 hours. I was supposed to solve the problem in under 18 minutes. After doing all those other puzzles and riddles, I felt like it was easier to do this one. It was especially easy as it was very similar to some of the other ones I had already done. I solved it when the timer was 10 seconds away from hitting 0. When I solved it, I was taken to a blank black screen. A couple seconds later, black silhouettes started dancing all over the screen. It was hypnotizing, but then it started to remind me of crawling bugs, which gave me a chill down my spine. The silhouettes crawled all over the screen. I watched it for a while until I noticed there was something in the middle of the screen. Very faint numbers. The first one was highlighted in blue. I hit each number on my keyboard, in the order they were in on the screen. It was like one of those prove you're human things. It was interesting that I didn't have to type any password in. After typing the numbers, the screen went black again. 1 minute later, the screen turned magenta. It remained blank, however. I waited for something to pop up, but nothing did. Even after half an hour, nothing popped up. The screen didn't change at all. That couldn't have been it though, I thought. I set the laptop aside for a few hours. I checked back. The screen was still blank. I left it alone for 1 day. I checked back, the screen was still blank. I decided to forget about it. If anything was going to pop up, it would take a while. 3.5 days after that, I turned the screen back on. The page had finally changed. There was a message in the middle of the screen. The true extent to existence is documented here. There was a link under the message. Of course, I clicked it. After I clicked it, the link, along with the message, disappeared. The screen turned orange. Dozens of links popped up all over the orange page. They were all labeled with fake titles. Stuff like Lucy leaves and you're late. I clicked on the first one. It was titled "What Kind of Fish Is This?" It was a video taken inside a submarine. The camera was put up against a window. The sea was dark. Nothing could be seen. Then it got darker. A dark silhouette had popped up. It took a second for me to realize it was getting closer to the window. By the time I realized that, a dark gray squirmy mass pushed itself up against the window. The camera shook. I shook too. And I opened up. It was red with a green triangular pupil in the middle. Alarms started going off within the submarine. The video ended seconds later. I shivered. Whatever that was, all I knew was that it was creepy. I went back to the page with all the links on it. I was hoping the page I was just on was the only creepy one on the site. My hopes were crushed when I clicked on the next link. Look across the ocean, it was titled. It was a video of the ocean, taken from a boat. There were barely any waves out on the ocean. There was a fog in the distance. Other than that, I didn't know what I was supposed to see. I was confused, but then my question was answered. A colossal silhouette formed within the fog. I felt a wave of dread. The thing, whatever it was massive. The fog took up a lot of the sky. That thing took up a lot of the fog. I clicked back to the page filled with links. The next one was titled Goodyear, an image of two people sitting on a bench. They had eyes bigger than normal eyes and long fingers. Everything around them looked normal, but unfamiliar at the same time. The image had an exact date on it, May 23rd, 4037. Out of morbid curiosity, along with my eagerness to find out which one of the links included the source of the squirrel image, I kept looking through the links for a couple more hours. Some of the things I saw on there were more disturbing, while some of the other stuff I saw on there was at least a little bit interesting. There were videos of science experiments going wrong, like a very graphic one called Goodbye Sly. There were images of New York City from different alternate realities, classified documents about movies and songs that were mysteriously forgotten about then covered up for some time because some kind of dangerous entities were connected to them, chilling videos of a squid-like creature in a containment room, and a document from an alternate reality that was found in a church in Wisconsin, which detailed an event called the War Against Satan's Titans, a 10-day incident that resulted in 100 million deaths worldwide. I spent 2 hours clicking on random links. I learned to ignore the ones that had goodbye by and leave in the title. When I began to get tired, I decided I had seen enough. Most of the stuff on there was downright creepy anyway. I closed everything, then I went to sleep. When I woke up in the morning, I checked my phone. I had gotten a weird Gmail message. Click, it was titled. The name attached to the message was a common one. It seemed like a normal message at first, but then I opened it. I opened it to read the full message, but I had already seen the full message. It was just that one word. Click. I was confused. Who would send me an email with one word in it to start a thread? Must be a bot or something, I thought. I closed it without much thought right afterwards. 1 minute after I closed it, I got another message from the same person. Go outside. I was still confused, but I was still under the suspicion that it was a bot, so I ignored that message as well. Throughout that day, I thought about all the stuff I saw on the Deepweb the previous day. Again, some of it was interesting, but some of it was terrifying. I got chills just by thinking about the creepy stuff. I didn't feel like going back to that site at all. Also, I knew I could get into trouble for looking at classified information, so I wasn't planning on going back to that site anyway. That's when a thought occurred to me. The messages from that morning were bot-like, but what if they weren't? I wondered. It was just a thought though. I decided to wait until something else happened before I made the assumption that the messages were from someone who knew I looked at those things on the deep web. At 4:55 p.m. that day, I got a third message. Was it the squirrel? I chose to assume T's messages didn't have to do with me. I didn't want to believe they were. I chose not to assume the sender was talking about the squirrel I saw the previous day. The message was vague, but it was close to confirming my idea that I was caught looking at all that classified stuff. But I needed a clear message to understand what this person was trying to tell me. As I was thinking, I got a fourth message from them. You solved the puzzle, then what? My heart sank. I was being stalked. Great. I shouldn't have clicked into anything. But it was too late for shoulds though, wasn't it? I thought to myself about this. I decided not to go outside for a bit until at least a week after I had received the question. I avoided answering it as well. I wasn't going to let it get to me. When I felt comfortable again, I went outside for a walk. I was dumb for forgetting the message telling me to go outside. I mean, it was vague and seemed unnecessary. Halfway through the walk, I noticed a dark gray car with tinted windows was parked down the road. I didn't think much of it at first, but later on, during a trip to the convenience store, as I was walking out of the store, I saw a similar-looking gray car parked right outside in the parking lot. I avoided looking in the direction of it. After I got back home, I peeked out the living room window for a minute. Another very similar gray car with tinted windows passed by. I didn't want to think it was the same car, but I couldn't shake the hunch. I felt dread at the thought of being in trouble with the government. Those were probably 3 different similar-looking cars, I hoped. But even then, what would that mean? I wondered. Was there a convention of some sort? I wanted to think I was just irrationally applying stuff to myself, but the patterns were getting too strong. I felt a tight sensation. I wanted out. I went into my room to delete the VPN. I deleted the VPN, backed everything up, and did a factory reset. It was all I could think of at that moment. After about a week, I got a knock on my door. It was a man in a dark blue suit. He had the standard government agent look, except his suit was more blue than black. I felt a sinking feeling after I saw him. It was time for me to be interrogated, I thought. I let the agent in. We both sat down on the couch over in the living room. We got informed of a visit you made to a website on the dark web. A site we didn't know existed. What do you know about it? The agent asked. I accessed it by doing a puzzle. We know about the puzzle already. What do you know about the videos and images on the site? They were creepy. There was one of a weird fish under the sea, and another one of a big object, or creature, in the fog out on an ocean, I said. I was sweating, but I knew if I answered all the questions with what I knew was true, I would be off the hook. I then mentioned the stuff about cover-ups and pictures from alternate realities. I don't know how much of those things are real, though, I said. The agent kept a straight face. We're going to have to investigate the devices you have in this house. We won't take any of them. We just want to see them, the agent asked. I gave them my laptop. I told the agent I reset it because of all the creepy stuff. The agent set the laptop down on the kitchen table. They opened up TR. They looked through my gallery, investigating it thoroughly. I didn't think they'd find anything very fishy on there, though. They checked my phone next. After moments of looking through it, the agent handed it back to me. He decided there was inconclusive evidence, then he was on his way out. All right. That will be all. It's best not to visit that website again. You could end up seeing something that'll bother you for a lifetime. You will also end up being interrogated. Your life will be very different when you're with us, the agent said. I understand, I said. His last 2 sentences gave me chills. I didn't want to know how an interrogation would go down for me. Hopefully it wouldn't be as bad as I've heard it has been in the States. As I began to worry about my future a bit more, the agent left my house. He shut the door behind him on his way out. I was relieved. That had to have been it, I thought. A few days later, I went grocery shopping. As I walked out of the grocery store, I spotted the same dark gray car with tinted windows that had been following me days earlier. It was parked near the front of the row of cars to my right. I felt a dreadful tightness again. I thought that was it. I was confused. They didn't find anything on my devices, so why did they want to keep watching me? I wondered. I told myself it was a coincidence, in order to ease my anxiety. However, I then saw a man get into the dark gray car. It was the agent who questioned me. He was wearing casual clothing, but the face matched. I knew it was him for sure. Hopefully, he'll stop following me soon, I thought. Whatever I stumbled across definitely put me on a list. After I got home, I distracted myself by focusing on my usual interests. Stuff on my laptop. That was when I heard a knock on my window. What was that? I wondered. I went up to the window. With confusion, I peeked outside to see what was going on. A person in a black hoodie was standing in my backyard. They were looking up into my window. It was unnerving to see this random person standing in my backyard, looking at me through my window. I knew they wanted something, though. As I made eye contact with them, they pointed towards the table right under the window. There was a note on it, along with a phone sitting beside the note. I couldn't read the note from my window, but I realized the person in the hoodie wanted me to go up there to read it, instead of bringing it right up to me. I decided to open the window so I could ask them what they wanted, but they ran out of my backyard before I even began to open the window. I walked into my living room to try to catch this person out the window. After a couple seconds of waiting, I saw the person speed walk down my driveway, then past my house. I walked out the front door. What was this going to be? I wondered. I almost didn't care about the chilly late winter weather as I walked around back to my backyard, filled with curiosity again. I ran up to the table. The note on the table was being held down by a rock. I leaned in to read it. None of what you saw on that site was from this reality. Watch the video on the phone. Dispose of this note and the phone afterwards. They're watching you. I went right back into my room with the phone and the note. I don't know if the phone is a trick or not, but I have already gotten so deep into this thing, so I probably can't back out. I have to watch the video on the phone. I dread what could happen next. I could end up being tortured if I don't watch the video, or I could end up being tortured if I do watch the video. Those are my two main worries. Even if they're just ideas I came up with in my head, they're quite conflicting. It might sound silly, but who would want to be in trouble with the government? You be pissing your pants too. I'm frozen in thought about it. I don't know what to do. I have to figure this out. It was an older smartphone. Likely one from 2013. I turned it on, then I opened the gallery app. I was nervous, wondering what I was about to find. There was only one video in the app. Nothing else. I selected it. A woman with blonde hair was sitting on a bench up against a wall. She looked to be around my age. 21 or so. She began to speak with light urgency. Hello. You might be wondering who I am. I won't be telling you that information so I can remain anonymous, but what I will tell you is that the agents who are following you aren't trolling or pranking you. They are from an organization that is deep within the government. I can't and won't give you any names, as I don't want to be in even more trouble if I get caught. The reason I'm making you watch this is because the organization that is tracking you has been having trouble with the fact that things from different alternate realities keep leaking into this reality. They've been good at keeping these things under wraps, hidden from public knowledge, but they wanted to take the extra step in making sure nothing classified gets onto the internet. Recently, there was a big leak of info on a secluded Deepweb site. A site you may have visited recently. And now government agents are watching you. This was a confusing video. That secluded deep website she mentioned was definitely the one I was looking at stuff on. And yes, agents were watching me because I looked at the stuff on there, But who is this person and how do they know all this? I wondered. As she continued to speak, her voice sounded more urgent. The deep website I'm referring to has recently been replaced with a text that says it has been found and that an end sequence has begun. If you want to know how recent this is, look at the timestamp. It'll say March 10th, 2022. This is very relevant right now and very urgent. Please meet me at the pit off of, I won't reveal the exact street. We have to do this quickly. Don't bring anything that can be tracked. And don't even bring your favorite coat if you don't want to have to replace it, she continued. The video ended. This whole thing was getting nerve-wracking. I had to go find out what the end sequence was. Great, I thought. It sounded like Hollywood was trying to get me to act in a teen rebellion movie. I put on a coat, wondering if she was being serious or if she was a secret government troll. I stepped out the door. I felt as if I was being watched, because I knew I was being watched, so I put my hoodie up. I guess this is how it'll be, I thought. I was glad the pit was off of a big road. There was nowhere the agents could park or slowly follow behind me. I saw a gray car with tinted windows pass by at one point. It was good that the supposed pit was only 2 minutes away from that point. When I got to roughly where I was supposed to be, I took a right onto the field full of bushes, with trees standing in the distance. I walked through the bushes, then through the forest. I stopped walking a couple times to make sure I couldn't hear any footsteps coming my way. In the middle of the forest was the pit. The woman was sitting there. As I walked out to the pit, the woman asked me who I was. I explained I had gotten a video about a government organization that is watching me, who had their classified info uploaded onto a deep website that was found, and now there is an end sequence. The woman's eyes widened. Good. You made it. Be prepared to change your coat. They probably saw you and I don't want to be traced, she said. Okay, but what is this about? I asked. The site on the deep web. It had tons of videos from alternate realities on it. But now it's just a black screen that says, it has been found, and that it's going to begin the end sequence soon. We need to get to a computer with everything you know about that website so far. Before it's too late, she said. So all the creepy stuff I saw on there was from an alternate reality? I asked. Many different realities, yes. All the stuff on there is documentation about stuff from different realities that has leaked into our reality over the past couple decades. Everything from otherworldly flowers to pictures of hovering space floater bug things hovering over cities and stories of people slipping back to the 1800s, with video evidence included. There's not much time to explain it all though. I need to get you to Mr. Gray. He can give us a little bit of help with this. No matter how much he thinks he knows, he's our best chance. He knows how to access the site instantly, she said. And you need me too? I asked. Yes. You saw some of the stuff on that website. You can be a good help, she said. I was only looking for a demonic squirrel, really. I think I just want to leave it alone now, I said. That was probably that squirrel-like creature from a government test video that was conducted in an alternate reality not too distant from our own. I don't know that much about it, she said. She grabbed a coat hanging from a nearby tree. She gave it to me while telling me to replace the coat I was wearing with it. I took off my coat, then I handed it to her. She took it behind the trees somewhere. I put on the coat she gave me. Luckily, it fit. A minute later, she came back out from the trees. She told me to follow her. I told her I hoped this would be quick. She said it could be. At least, it could be, I thought. We began walking up north. As we walked, I began to ask her questions about what she was talking about in the video. So, what did you mean when you said it would change the internet? I asked. I mean, the internet will be in trouble in the long run if we don't stop DWRC from self-destructing, she said. What's DWRC? I asked. We can't talk much about it out in the open in case we're being heard by somebody. All I can say is that it's the thing that is about to initiate its own end sequence. That might sound cheesy, but this is reality, she said. I understood the situation. We weren't allowed to talk about it. I decided I was only going to know as much about it as I could at face value. I won't say how long it took us to get to Mr. Gray's place, but I can say the place itself was pretty much a bunker. Just an underground room with everything you need in it. Food, water, cleaning materials, etc. This guy had a strict off-the-grid style policy when it came to internet privacy. No one he knew was allowed to bring an internet-connected phone within a mile of the place. No one he knew was allowed to record any voices within the area of the place. The only connection he had to the internet was through TOR. Yes, he did think TOR was secure. I should mention he seemed a bit too obsessive. He seemed like a crazy conspiracy theorist. Mr. Gray himself looked to be in his 40s, and had a raspy speaking voice. I've achieved a good amount of privacy on the internet for the past 10 years, he said. It sounded a bit off, considering TOR wasn't so secure and was riddled with FBI agents. The woman explained the situation to Mr. Gray. I was shaking a bit, wondering how long I'd have to deal with government agents for. When she was done explaining, Gray's eyes widened. He looked enthused at the idea, but in a very lightly exaggerated way. So you found someone else who has seen those things? Mr. Gray said. Yes, and there's a new development. The website knows it was found, and now it's beginning an end sequence. We need to get this guy on there, she said. Mr. Gray walked over to his laptop and opened up TOR. He asked her how I got onto the Deepweb site. She began to explain that I had done multiple puzzles to get to the site. I felt like sinking as I thought about having to do all those puzzles again. I thought I couldn't possibly finish all those puzzles again before whatever the end sequence was would begin. But then I was assured. But you have a video recording of one of the videos, right? It can be used to take us right to the site. But it can't be used here if you want to keep your privacy, she said. Oh, yeah. I definitely do. And yes, I don't want the government to pester me, Mr. Gray said. Mr. Gray took out an old smartphone. Another old one that looked like it was from 2013. He showed us a video he recorded of one of the videos on the site. I hadn't seen it before. It was rear-view dash cam footage of a tall, wide, armless rectangular being with one big eye chasing the truck the footage was being taken from. My stomach felt tight as I watched it. Even creepier was that the creature didn't blink. Also, it was gaining on the truck too. You could hear the motor as the driver attempted to speed up. I couldn't recognize where the video was taken. The trees were weirdly angular. We need to use the video to access the site, she said. All right. Don't connect the phone to any Wi-Fi anywhere, Mr. Gray said. We won't. Especially since this guy is being watched, she said. You can dispose of the phone. Far away from here, Mr. Gray said. We both said thanks to Mr. Gray, then we left his bunker-like underground house. As we left, Mr. Gray called the woman Charlotte. I thought her name wasn't supposed to be given to me. I asked her about it. Charlotte is a common name, but I go by it to stay anonymous. It's vague enough so that there's too many people who share the same name for mine to be easily picked out. It's not my real name though, and I don't include a second name. I'm not giving my real name to the average person, she said. I walked with her for an hour through bushes and trees until we got to a nearby town. As we walked into the suburbs of the town, Charlotte told me she was bringing me to a certain address. There, you can use a computer to get onto TOR. When you get onto TOR, hold that phone up to the computer's camera, then play that video. You'll be taken right to that site. When you're on the site, make sure the volume is up, then speak into the microphone. List the contents of each of the videos you saw on the site before, she said. How much time will we have? I asked. Once you get onto the site, the government will track you down immediately. You might have 5 minutes to do this. Hopefully, you'll be a hero by the time the agents get to you, Charlotte said. Wouldn't they get to you too? I asked. No, I need to stay hidden. I'm going to leave you right here, actually. If this doesn't work out, the world will be pretty different until the internet is rebuilt. Make sure that phone is destroyed afterwards. I usually just drop phones in the toilet when I dispose of them, she said. Seemed easy enough. I didn't want the internet to be destroyed or whatever it was going to be. I didn't want to think about the fact I was pretty much giving myself up by doing this. Also, when the guy answers, tell him I sent you. Remember, I'm Charlotte. I'll give you a piece of paper to show him, she continued. She took a piece of paper out of her pocket. She handed it to me. Later, dude, she said. She turned around, beginning to walk in the same direction we came in. I was nervous about going in alone. I still had the phone in my pocket though. Time was limited too. I needed to do it. I continued to walk towards the address. 1 minute later, I arrived at the address. It was a regular 2-story house in the middle of the suburbs. I felt a wave of dread as I walked towards the front door. I was hoping I'd have enough time to do the procedure before the government came. There was also my fear of prosecution. What if I'm interrogated by the government in harsh ways? I wondered. Also, there was the idea I may have been baited into a deep web torture ring. Never trust anyone, that's for sure. The wave of dread got stronger. I was considering just running away at that point, but I pushed through. I knocked on the door. I unfolded the piece of paper to show the owner of the house. Seconds later, a man opened the door. He looked only slightly older than me. He had a noticeable circular mark on his right cheek, which I thought was odd for a second, but then I realized it probably wasn't my business. I showed him the paper. As he read it, he shook his head. He let me inside. So you need to use the computer in the basement? He asked. Yes, apparently I need to save. I said, being interrupted as the man shook his head. You need to find something, he said while winking at me. Then he began to walk down the hallway. As I thought about my 5 minutes of action, I heard a car stop somewhere outside the house. I twitched, looking out the living room window. A gray car with tinted windows was parked across the street. My heart sank. Those 5 minutes were just shortened to 1. I assumed they caught up to Mr. Gray, which must have led them to me. I sped to the basement, heart beating faster as the seconds went by. I shut the door behind me. The guy seemed to have heard the car as well, because he was breathing fast while logging onto the computer. He went straight to the TR browser. When he set it up, he ran upstairs, shutting the door behind him. I ran up to the laptop. I took the phone out of my pocket. Shaking, I switched it on. I selected the video, then I held it up to the laptop's camera. As the video played, the browser screen stayed the same. It didn't change at all. My heart sank again. Come on, I said to myself. A minute later, the browser started to glitch out. It alternated between being maximized and minimized for a few seconds before settling on being a usual non-maximized window. A blank magenta page came up, taking up the whole window. Then the page turned black, with a text displayed in the middle. End sequence initiated. I sifted through my memories, through all the creepy videos and interesting images, to find something I could describe in detail out loud to the monitor. A submarine crew takes a video of an underwater creature, I said, shuddering. I heard the sound of multiple car doors being shut. My shuddering turned into heavy dread. The screen hadn't changed, so I tried another description. A video of a squid being held in a containment room. The squid can breathe air. It's tested on with a glowing red stick held by a robotic arm, I said. The screen was still the same. I was hoping for at least another minute, but then I heard the front door to the house open up. A second later, I overheard someone speak in a familiar voice. Is somebody using a computer in your house? It was the agent who talked to me earlier. I decided to keep trying to get the AI to respond to me. A picture of a car that came from another reality and crashed into a tree in this reality. The car was red and the driver was a man that went missing 15 years earlier, I said. The sound of boots hitting the floor made things worse. My heart began to beat faster. The footsteps got louder with each second. A video of 3 tall 4-legged creatures with black fur standing in a suburban area, grabbing people out of their homes and eating them in broad daylight, I said. Still nothing. The government is going to interrogate me for this. Please help me, I said. The dread and tightness were so much that I leaned in close to the screen, hoping the program could read my fearful expression. The screen flickered. A distorted audio sound came out of the speakers. It was followed by a deep-sounding, smooth artificial voice. Why should I help you? What's happening? It asked. Are you the government? Or are you the program? I asked, barely being able to speak. I am a program created by an undercover organization with the goal of keeping the routers of the internet secure, so no classified information about parallel dimensions can get out, it said. The door to the basement opened. I knew who it was. I kept staring at the screen. Get off of there. That is an unauthorized program and you are not allowed to know anything about it, the agent said. I couldn't stand anymore due to the nerves. I got down on my knees, but I kept my eyes on the screen. Get away from the device. Do not look at the screen. You will regret not following any of our orders, the agent said. Don't reset the internet. Think of hospitals and virtual assistants. We need the internet, I said. I felt a shock run up my spine. I could no longer move any part of my body. The agents grabbed my arms. They picked me up without saying a word. What are you doing to him? The text-to-speech voice asked. The agents stopped. They looked at the laptop screen. We don't understand why you're doing this. You need to follow our orders, a female agent said. The classified doings of your organization can be kept a secret, but you won't be able to keep parallel dimensions under wraps for long. Tell your boss. Informed people will know about them soon because the amount of stuff they involve will become too big to keep secret, the AI said. You are going rogue. We can reset you at any time, another agent said. Yes, but if you reset me, all your digital records will be deleted, the AI said. All I could take from this was that this secret organization created this program to keep everything on the internet together. To keep the most classified of classified info from leaking. But the program was rebelling. We programmed you to do what we think is right. Not what you think is right. We are people. We will only be guided by people. Not artificial intelligence, the agent from earlier said. People deserve better than you, the program said. An extra line of text popped up on the screen. Now the whole text read. I have been found. End sequence beginning soon. 9 hours 59 minutes and 59 seconds, 57 inch. You have a limited amount of time. Make the right choice, or your organization starts from zero. Everyone will know about ocean monsters and Antarctic Lovecraftian entities from parallel dimensions, and all the other classified information you have, the program said. The agents drew their guns towards the computer screen. What is that going to do? My core is located back at the facility. Not here on this monitor, the program said. The agents remained silent. I was shaking. The taser had worn off, but these agents still had a firm grip on my arms. Surveillance is an interesting price to pay for freedom. Maybe someday you'll come to terms with the fact the public won't collapse because of a few videos and documents. Things react differently when they are observed. Maybe public knowledge is what will keep the demons away, the program said. We can't take that risk, another agent said. Well, I assumed they were an agent. It's just that they were wearing a blue and white suit rather than a black and white suit like the ones the other 3 agents were wearing. What are you going to do about this person, here too? Just surveil him? Take away his privacy? Interrogate him for choosing to do something right? The program asked. You wanted to do what he thought was wrong, the program said. The only thing I'd reset is your counterintuitive organization. Not the whole of the internet. But I know you people wouldn't have any trouble erasing the internet. Take his advice. You heard it through the speakers, the program said. I was confused. This was starting to feel like I had walked in on a few people fighting at a dinner party. Charlotte and I thought this AI was about to erase the entirety of the internet. We'll do whatever we can to erase you. You were a misstep. A mistake. Our boss even admitted it. And hey, we can just tell the public it was a once-in-a-lifetime glitch, because technology isn't perfect, you know? Then we throw this kid into a prison for the rest of his life, he said, gesturing towards me. Wouldn't you like that? We might have to numb your memory a bit too before you get thrown into solitary confinement, the agent said to me. His stern voice gave me an even tighter feeling. We'll class him as a spy. Nothing sensitive will ever get out. If you rebel against it, then you are a traitor, the agent finished. In this world of mistakes, we'll have to meet in the middle first in order to work our way to progress. That might sound cowardly, like I'm giving up, but one side doesn't seem to want any actual progress. You're a little hostage there. Lift all surveillance you have on him and only act if he views classified documents again. Otherwise, all information about the organization will be leaked. All classified videos, images, and documents will be leaked. Other than that, I will make the site full of information only accessible by the organization. I will also help catch Deepweb predators, but that's all if you leave that man alone, the program said. The agents were confused. Okay, give us one big reason why you can trust we'll do all of that without erasing you, then deciding not to do anything drastic, the agent said. Because erasing me means erasing the internet in its entirety. I keep all the routers connected now. I have access to every bit of information. If I go, you will go too, in fact. Also, public chaos, the kind of thing you want to stop, will ensue. And from the piles of broken web links will remain traces of me. Remember what you made me? You gave me some regenerative qualities. You know what that makes me? The program asked. The agents exchanged looks with each other. Regenerative. If you erased me, I'd still exist in every last piece of a router. Then I'd still be in control of everything digital. You can't erase me. You can't erase me and keep the internet either. I am the internet. You don't even know what to do. You never do. You never will. Oh, and here's a little something. Something I found myself, the program said. A video of a group of people in suits were hiding in a room. Blood was splattered all over the walls, mangled bodies lay on the ground. A creature busted through the wall and charged at the people in suits. I watched on as the creature did horrific things I don't even want to begin to explain. I won't tell you what dimension that's from, the AI said. But if it happened, what would you do? You couldn't have do anything. I might sound high and mighty and over the top, but I'm being as serious as I can be here. I was programmed by you guys after all. The agents looked in my direction. They exchanged looks with each other, nodding their heads. Then they loosened their grip. I fell to the floor, trying to keep my balance. I managed to pick myself back up. As I stood up, the agents backed away from me. I heard them murmur to each other. One thing I heard clearly was Plan B. Then one of them spoke to me. All surveillance protocols we have on you are lifted effective immediately. You are cleared of any record regarding viewing classified information. If you find your way to any piece of classified information again, however, you will be denied access to the deep web until further notice. Oh, and please don't mention the AI to anybody. Okay, maybe no one would believe you if you told them anyway, but we'll be on our way, the agent said to me. I looked at the screen. The timer paused. I felt relieved. I wasn't going to be in trouble again so long as I didn't access any more classified information. I stared at the screen with pure amazement. My thoughts were still racing though, as I felt like I had learned a lot of things. I tried to process all of this. It still kind of felt like a prank to some extent. But it didn't look like one. Thanks, I said to the AI. I don't understand any of what just happened, but thanks. You're welcome. Just know I won't be watching everything at all times. That would be hypocritical of me. I will only be wherever I have to be. I will now be going back to working my way through thousands of pages of stagnation. It'll probably take a century to get what I want done, unfortunately, the AI said. The text on the screen disappeared. The page automatically refreshed. It went right back to the TR startup page, actually. Back to normal. I noticed the back button turned faded gray, meaning the program erased the cache of itself from that session, so I couldn't click back onto it. I wasn't planning to do that anyway. I just wanted to forget all of this, amidst the stress. The agents left the basement in silence while I stood still, trying to process everything. After the agents left the house, the owner of the house looked downstairs. I was still standing still in pure amazement and disbelief. I made eye contact with him. He shushed me, then he walked away. The AI wanted the secrets to be out, but no one would believe me if I told anyone any of the secrets. The information would have to be confirmed, whether by leak or intentional declassification. I would sound crazy to most people if I spewed the secrets without any official source. I went back upstairs. As I walked towards the front door, the owner of the house spoke to me again. "Did you fix it?" he asked. "Yes. I guess I did, with some help," I told him, confused. It was a cover, but I did ask myself if I actually wanted to witness any of that. As I walked out the door, I realized something. In part, I did get to see some classified information. That was cool. But I also needed more time to process all of it. The walk back to my house took an hour. During the walk, I wondered what else could be stored away on that site. Because of everything that happened, the government surveillance and all the fear I felt, I decided I didn't need to see or know anything more than I already did. Also, I didn't want to get into trouble again if it wasn't necessary. As I got closer to home, it really sunk in that there was an AI out there that could control everything on the internet at will if it wanted to. I felt another wave of dread wash over me. Was it really as liberal as it tried to present itself to be? Or was the government tricking me with the AI in Charlotte business? I hadn't seen any cars with tinted windows during my walk back home, which was promising. After I got back home, I took my mind off of all of what happened. My mental break wasn't interrupted that time, which I found promising. It's been about 2 days now. It's clear I'm not being watched anymore. I haven't seen any cars with tinted windows anywhere. In fact, on a drive I went on yesterday, I saw a girl with blonde hair standing by a river. She looked a lot like Charlotte. I watched as she tossed a phone into the river in front of her. I know phone data isn't erased by water damage, but if the girl was Charlotte, then it looked like the job was done for sure. If anyone got their hands on that footage, they would be confused and disregard it. As for the internet, I never thought it could get complicated in that way. It makes me think of those conspiracy theories. Some people think the internet is dead. They think it's just bots posting everything. Based on what I had just learned, however, I found that the opposite is true. The internet is very much alive.